Chapter 756. It wasn't just Tang Zheng's group that was sending troops to Heavenly Mountain. Su Tian was leading a large group of troops towards Heavenly Mountain with great momentum. Heavenly Mountain was the largest mountain range in the northwest. It was also the mountain range furthest from the ocean. The towering mountains separated this region into two parts, north and south. Moreover, Heavenly Mountain stretched endlessly, directly reaching the border of the country. The mechanized troops moved very quickly. Tang Zheng's group sat in the military off-road vehicle and watched the gradually moving Heavenly Mountain reveal its majestic body. They couldn't help but be deeply attracted. If the Mountain River blood sacrifice array was used in such a place filled with outstanding people, it would definitely be a stain on this place. Tang Zheng silently clenched his fists. He definitely couldn't let such a cruel thing happen. Along the way, Su Tian explained the knowledge of Heavenly Mountain to them, as well as the known information. This region had always been a deserted place, but recently, this place had become much more densely populated. This mountain is so tall and deep. Do you know where those people were taken? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Su Tian shook his head. We don't know yet. There is also no clear information from the satellite surveillance. Tian Chanzi said indifferently, since the 100-change star sovereign is doing this, then your satellite definitely won't be able to capture it. He definitely has a way to avoid your satellite and make it blind. Isn't the 100,000 mountains the best proof? Su Tian said resentfully, Senior is right. The satellite surveillance of the 100,000 mountains didn't send back any useful information. Everyone wanted to know the situation in the 100,000 mountains, but now that the 100,000 mountains had been occupied by the 100-change star sovereign, demonic beasts ran rampant. The troops sent to investigate had all been annihilated, so no one dared to send anyone else. If you want to use the Mountain River blood sacrifice array, it isn't as simple as you think. Aside from people, you must have the right time and the right place. The right place is the most important. Tian Chanzi was quite talkative and spoke bluntly. Su Tian raised his eyebrows and was overjoyed. Senior, please enlighten me. Since this mountain is called Heavenly Mountain, it's a place close to the sky. In order to set up this formation, it must be at the highest peak. That's because that's where the spiritual qi is the densest. It's the best place for the formation to operate. When Su Tian heard this, he rolled his eyes and blurted out, Tuamu, or peak. Tang Zheng and the other two looked at him suspiciously. Su Tian hurriedly explained, Tuamu, or peak is the first peak of Heavenly Mountain, the highest peak. It is the peak closest to the heavens, as Senior said. Those people should be on Tuamu, or peak. Since we have a goal, let's go for it. Tang Zheng nodded. The Heavenly Mountain stretched for tens of thousands of miles. The army followed the winding mountain road for a long time before finally reaching the end of the road. Cars could no longer reach the destination, so everyone got off their cars and walked. These people were the elites of the army and the elites of the National Security Bureau. Whether it was their physical strength or endurance, there was no doubt about it. Therefore, the marching speed was not slow. However, with Tang Zheng, Heaven Monk and the rest leading the way, these elites were left behind. Seeing the few of them casually crossing the mountains like they were taking a stroll, the group of elites were also shocked. After walking for a few days and nights in the mountains, the army finally saw a towering mountain in the distance. The mountain peak was covered in white snow, towering into the clouds, and there was no end in sight. Looking at this scene, Tang Zheng couldn't help but think of the Buzhou Mountain in the 100,000 mountains. Buzhou Mountain was also so majestic, covered in white snow. Su Tian pointed to the snow mountain and said, That's Tuamu, or peak. It's covered in white snow all year round. Don't think that it's already summer outside and the heat is unbearable. That mountain is a real world of ice and snow, and the conditions are very bad. Director, there's a situation. Suddenly, someone called out in a low voice. Su Tian was shocked and hurried to the source of the sound. Tang Zheng and the others also gathered around and saw several soldiers squatting in front of a low bush. Director, these branches were cut off, which means that someone has been here. This place was almost uninhabited, and it was impossible for someone to come here, unless it was some extreme mountaineering enthusiast who would risk their lives to challenge such a dangerous place. "There's blood here," another person called out. Sure enough, there were bloodstains on the ground. Following the bloodstains, they found a corpse in a pile of grass. Dead man. Their faces immediately changed. This is a mountaineering enthusiast. Look at his equipment, it's very professional. The soldier was experienced and knowledgeable. There are many mountaineering enthusiasts here every year, and many people have fallen from the mountain and lost their lives. Huh. This is a foreigner. Tang Zheng looked at the corpse curiously. It's not strange. This kind of extreme sport is mostly done by foreigners. They don't even need to climb from our country, but directly sneak in from the neighboring country's Tian Shan mountain range. We can't detect them at all. Then wouldn't it be too easy to sneak into the country? That's not it, because the road to sneak into the country is not peaceful. I heard that there are still terrorists lurking in that mountain range, and the terrain is steep. If you don't pay attention, you will lose your life. Only those professional mountaineers would choose this path. The terrorists are hiding in this mountain range? Tang Zheng had heard many rumors about these terrorists. Su Yingtian sighed faintly and said, "You don't know how powerful these people are. They are like lunatics. It's impossible to reform them. They are just the same, so it's a headache. Many of our soldiers have died in their hands." When the other soldiers heard this, their faces darkened. Many of them were soldiers who were stationed in this area all year round. They hated these terrorists. But they were like locusts, impossible to exterminate. Moreover, they were secretly in contact with foreign terrorist forces, and even trained by them. Then, they returned to the country and stirred up trouble. In short, this group of terrorists was extremely difficult to deal with. They were a huge problem for the country and the people. Tang Zheng had an idea, and said, "If they really are in that mountain range, after dealing with the mountain and river blood sacrifice array, we might be able to walk a little longer and annihilate them all." Unexpectedly, Su Yingtian was not optimistic, and said, "You don't know, the military has already been dispatched many times, but they are like rats, burrowing into a hole as soon as the wind blows. It's impossible to find them." Tang Zheng, however, did not believe in this evil. He thought to himself that he should first solve the problem in front of him. This person's throat was cut. It was a very cruel method of killing. Maybe he met the 100 Faces Star Lord and the others, so he was killed. Tang Zheng looked at the bloody wound on the corpse's throat and said, "Judging from the condition of the corpse, it shouldn't have been too long. If we catch up, we should be able to make it in time." Immediately, everyone increased the speed of their march and rushed towards Tumur Peak. Tang Zheng and the others did not care about shocking the world, and directly used the shrinking ground into an inch technique, moving as fast as lightning. Su Yingtian's cultivation was not weak, and could barely keep up with the speed of the few of them. However, the other soldiers, even if they used all their strength, were unable to keep up with their whereabouts. They could only be left far behind. At the foot of Tuamur Mountain, the four of them stopped at the same time. This was because they saw the messy footprints on the white snow. Many of the footprints had already been covered by the white snow. It was obvious that they had been walking for a long time. What shocked the three of them the most was that there were so many footprints that it made their hearts turn cold. "I'm afraid there really are tens of thousands of people," Su Yingtian exclaimed after a long while. "I'm afraid it's more than that," Tang Zheng said. "There are so many people. How did they get them to willingly go up this cold snow mountain?" Tian Chanzi said, "The 100 Faces Star Lord has many ways to control people. With his cultivation, it is not impossible to control tens of thousands of people." Su Yingtian sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go up and stop them." Tang Zheng looked at Su Yingtian and said, "Chief Su, the one going up is the 100 Faces Star Lord. It will be very dangerous. You should stay at the foot of the mountain." Su Yingtian's expression turned cold and said, "Tang Zheng, Do you think I'm afraid of death? I, Suing Tian, have never been afraid of death. I don't know how many times I have wandered around the gates of hell. Moreover, this is my duty, the duty of a soldier. In the face of war, how can I retreat? Then leave a message and tell the others not to go up the mountain. Suing Tian shook his head without hesitation. That is also their duty. They are not deserters. In the face of a villain, no matter how powerful the other party is, the only choice is to rush up and fight. Tang Jing shook his head helplessly. Let's go. Don't waste time. Suing Tian urged. Climbing the snow mountain was much more difficult than the previous mountain path. However, for these people, although it was difficult, it was not difficult to move forward. They only left shallow footprints in the snow and quickly went up the mountain. The cold wind blew, making people's cheeks burn with pain. But the three people directly ignored it and strode forward. Suddenly, Tian Chanzi, who was at the front, stopped and waved his hand, motioning for the others to stop. What's wrong? There are people in front. The three people were already halfway up the mountain. In front of them was an endless expanse of snow, but there were no traces of people. They are lying in the snow. Tian Chanzi pointed in the distance and said. The three people were also lying behind a big stone covered in snow. They stuck out their eyes and looked around. Sure enough, there was something strange in the snow in the distance. 100 Faces Star Lord left behind scouts. Tang Jing frowned suspiciously. With 100 Faces Star Lord's arrogant character, how could he be so cautious? I will go over and kill them. Tang Jing volunteered. His figure flashed and drew a thin line in the snow. His figure was particularly eye-catching in the snow, and the other party obviously found him immediately. However, before they had time to react, Tang Jing had already rushed in front of them. With a flash of his sword, several people's necks were left with wounds. Blood spurted out and dyed the ground red. He did not show mercy. The other party was 100 Faces Star Lord's people, so they deserved to die. Besides, it was too risky to leave them alive. Chapter 757. He saw that the people who died on the ground were not Huaxia people. Instead, they had a Western face, a big beard, and a fierce expression. Suing Tian and the others also caught up. When they saw this scene, they also opened their eyes wide in shock. What's going on? There are still Westerners under the 100 Faces Star Lord? Tang Jing shook his head, indicating that he did not know. That's not right. Suddenly, Suing Tian squatted down and carefully examined the corpses. Finally, he found a book on one of them. What is this? Scripture, they are terrorists. Suing Tian's expression suddenly changed. Why are these terrorists guarding Tumur Peak? Tang Jing had an idea. Could it be that the 100 Faces Star Lord has subdued this group of terrorists? Humph. A cold snort interrupted Tang Jing, and Tian Chanzi said disdainfully, do you think that the 100 Faces Star Lord would have no bottom line? He is a very proud person. How could he look at these unrated terrorists? Suing Tian was speechless. If those terrorists heard Tian Chanzi say that they were unrated, they would probably be so angry that they wanted to kill someone. Tang Jing said doubtfully, then this is strange. This group of people are not the subordinates of the 100 Faces Star Lord, then why are they on guard here? The few of them looked at each other, unable to guess the reason. Continue to climb, and all the questions will be answered. Wu said. Thus, the few of them climbed the mountain again. Along the way, they encountered a few more waves of enemies. Without exception, they were all terrorists and were all killed. The expressions of the few of them became more and more serious. The closer they got to the top of the mountain, the more terrorists there were. It was as if the terrorists were out in full force. Who had such great power to invite these terrorists? Why does it feel like this is not the style of the 100 Faces Star Lord? Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. Tang Jing's heart moved. In fact, he also had this feeling. This was not the style of the 100 Faces Star Lord, but, other than him, who else would use the Mountain River blood sacrifice array? The demon god was already dead. Could it be that there were other demon survivors? No. If the demon race really had evil intentions, they would have set up the Mountain River blood sacrifice array long ago, and not just used a small array like last time, which only led the demon god back. This time, it was the return of the entire demon race. These were two completely different matters. There was no comparison. Finally, the peak of the mountain was in sight. Countless people gathered at the peak of the mountain. Roughly estimating, there were more than 10,000 people. Most of them had their hands and feet chained up like prisoners. There was no way for them to escape. Each and every one of them had a look of horror on their faces as they looked around helplessly, hoping that someone would come and save them. Some of them had already given up hope and were like walking corpses. Su Tian was extremely excited and said in a low voice, "We finally found them. Let's go and save them." "Calm down." Tian Chanzi immediately grabbed the restless Su Tian and said, "100 Faces Star Sovereign is up there. Even if we rush up there, it will be difficult for us to do so. We can't fight him head on. We can only outsmart him. Then what should we do? Are we just going to watch our fellow countrymen die?" Su Tian's face was flushed red. "If you rush up, they'll still die. It's just that you're one more," Tian Chanzi said mercilessly. Su Tian was speechless. He knew that Tian Chanzi was right and that he was too reckless. "But we can't just sit there and wait for death. We have to think of a way to get up there and figure out the situation," Tang Zheng said. Su Tian nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. "I'll go." Tang Zheng volunteered, "You guys wait here." "Crap, they're making a move." Suddenly, Marshall pointed to the peak of the mountain and said. The few of them immediately looked over and saw that a few of their necks had been cut open. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He couldn't help but think of the scene of the demon clan killing people and sacrificing them in order to welcome the demon god back. It was also like this, but there weren't so many of them. These executioners were all terrorists. Tang Zheng couldn't wait to rush up and let them have a taste of their throats. Boom! A ray of light shot up into the sky from the peak of the mountain. A black cloud had unknowingly gathered in the sky. The light rushed into the black cloud, and the black cloud gradually began to rotate. The few of them were attracted by this strange scene at the same time as they stared blankly at the sky. The Mountain River blood sacrifice array has been activated. We must stop them, Tang Zheng shouted. He no longer cared about exposing himself and rushed towards the peak of the mountain in a flash. A few terrorists were about to commit murder when they felt a pain in their necks. Blood spurted out and one by one, they clutched their necks and fell down in disbelief. "Who is it?" A series of explosive shouts rang out, only to see a few fiendish-looking terrorists stand out, directly pulling the trigger towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng dodged like a ghost, and all the bullets missed. He swept his gaze and finally saw everything on the mountain peak. The mountain peak was flat, and at this moment, it was filled with tens of thousands of people. The terrorists stood at the outermost periphery, pointing their guns at the innocent people. Irregular bloodlines were drawn on the ground with blood, and the blood of those people just now gathered in the middle of these bloodlines, and finally rose into the light pillar. Why don't I see the 100-form Star Sovereign? Tang Zheng didn't see that thin figure and couldn't help but frown. At such an important moment, the 100-form Star Sovereign shouldn't be absent. But he couldn't find the figure of the other party in the crowd, which made him puzzled. The people standing at the outermost periphery were all Westerners, and all of them stared at Tang Zheng with unfriendly expressions. All the muzzles were locked on him again. Open fire. Bang bang bang. Bullets flew, and many people were hit by stray bullets and fell to the ground dead. Hurry up and stop them, Tang Zheng shouted. A few figures also rushed out from under the cliff and went deep into the crowd. The gunshots gradually became fewer and fewer. 100-form Star Sovereign, come out. Hiding behind the crowd, what kind of expert are you? Tang Jing still couldn't find the 100-form star sovereign, and his heart was anxious, so he directly shouted loudly. The 100-form star sovereign still didn't appear. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out, "If you can't kill them, you can die yourselves. You must make the mountain river blood sacrifice array succeed." Tang Zheng's head trembled. This voice was too familiar, and he must have heard it somewhere before. Before he could figure it out, he saw some of the terrorists directly cut their throats and let the blood spurt out. Immediately, the light pillar became brighter, and the black clouds in the sky spun faster and faster. A big hole began to appear in the center of the vortex. Tang Zheng knew that if the mountain river blood sacrifice array succeeded, the demon army would descend from the black hole, and there would be no way to save the situation. These terrorists were not afraid of death at all. One after another, they stepped forward and sacrificed their own lives. Tang Zheng's hair stood on end. The terrorists were indeed crazy, just like those suicide attacks. For the sake of their so-called ideals, they didn't treat themselves as humans at all. He couldn't let them continue like this. Tang Zheng's gaze turned and stared at the light pillar in the center of the mountain peak and the complicated bloodlines on the ground. If he destroyed these, would the array stop? Tang Zheng immediately slashed out, and the sharp sword light went straight for the light pillar and the bloodlines. Then, an angry roar exploded, and a huge figure rushed out from the crowd, attempting to receive the sword. Pooh! The sword light directly split the figure in half. However, Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he stared at the huge corpse on the ground in a daze. Werewolf! Tang Zheng blurted out. The one who died on the ground was actually a werewolf. Ever since he saw the werewolf at the martial arts competition, Tang Zheng hadn't seen it again. He was very clear that this was a subordinate of the Western Empire's Rockefeller family. At this moment, to see a werewolf here, it was definitely not simple. Moreover, the enemies all had Western faces, so it was impossible for them to be the subordinates of the 100-form star sovereign. No wonder they felt a little strange just now. It turned out that all of this was quite different from what they had expected, and they had made a big mistake. The reason why the 100-form star sovereign did not appear was because all of this was not led by him, but by the mastermind behind it, the Rockefeller family. Tang Zheng immediately thought of the young Lord Lewis's face and shouted, "Lewis, you must be here. Get the hell out here." He was extremely angry. On one hand, he was tired of dealing with the 100-form star sovereign, and in the end, there was still this group of people behind his back who almost succeeded. When the others saw this scene, they also noticed that something was wrong, especially Su Tian. His expression changed greatly as he muttered to himself, "Lewis, the young lord of the Rockefeller family, could it be that all of this was controlled by him? Other than him, who else could be so crazy?" Tang Zheng said angrily. In this way, all of the questions were answered. No wonder there were so many terrorists, it was definitely the Rockefeller family that controlled them. This was because there had always been rumors in the outside world that these terrorists were funded by these large financial groups, and that they were just acting out a good show. Hurry up and escape down the mountain. Someone will help you. Tang Zheng knew that there was going to be a big battle, so he reminded the innocent people. No one can leave. A tall figure walked out from the crowd. If it was not Lewis, who else could it be? Lewis looked at Tang Zheng overbearingly and said, "No one is allowed to leave. The mountain river blood sacrifice array must be completed. Complete your ass. I'll kill you first, and then the mountain river blood sacrifice array will no longer exist." Tang Zheng said fiercely. Lewis laughed coldly and said, "Tang Zheng, you are still so naive. The return of the demon clan is an irresistible trend. This world is already on the verge of collapse. Only the return of the demon clan and the rule of the world is the right path." Nonsense. Tang Zheng reprimanded, "The return of the demon clan, the people are in a terrible situation. Can you bear to see that scene?" "Why wouldn't I?" Lewis disagreed. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and said, "Yes, you are not human at all. You are just a bat. Today, I will turn you into a dead bat so that you will never have the chance to suck human blood again." Chapter 758. Lewis disappeared into the crowd, and the Westerners rushed forward like a swarm of bees. There were roars of anger, and many of them transformed into werewolves or bats. On the other hand, the terrorists retreated in panic as if they had seen a ghost. Obviously, these terrorists did not know that they were in cahoots with these monsters. Tang Jing coldly snorted and said, "Director Su, bring your men down the mountain first. We will deal with them." Su Yingtian weighed the pros and cons. Although he also wanted to kill the enemy, the most important thing was to save people. Thus, he quickly cut off the chains on the innocent people's hands and feet and brought them down the mountain. The werewolves and bats wanted to stop them but were blocked by Tang Jing and the others. "Kill, don't show mercy." Tang Jing roared with killing intent. The three of them rushed out together and turned into three streams of light. In an instant, the sword light shone brightly and many werewolves and bats were torn into pieces. Facing Tang Jing, these werewolves and bats were still lacking in maturity and were unable to withstand the might of Tang Jing's sword. But they were not afraid of death, especially the more they fought, the braver they became. Moreover, the bats flew in the air and launched a sneak attack, making people unable to guard against them. "We can't let those people escape. Capture them for me." Lewis's voice sounded out. A few bats soared into the air and swooped down the mountain. Seeing this, Tang Jing shouted, "Xiao Bai, go and destroy them." Xiao Bai cried out and immediately transformed. It soared into the air and chased down the mountain while its four hooves stepped on flames. Boom! A stream of flames spewed out from its mouth and the bats that filled the sky immediately turned into roasted bats. They screamed miserably and fell from the sky in an attempt to extinguish the flames. But how could Xiao Bai's flames be so easy to extinguish? In a short while, they turned into ashes. Xiao Bai guarded the mountain, making it impossible for the enemy to go down the mountain. Those terrorists had long been scared out of their wits. They rushed down the mountain in a panic. Xiao Bai was not polite at all. Flames rose to the sky, and these people immediately turned into flaming people, turning into ashes. Immediately, no one dared to take even half a step forward. Xiao Bai had the posture of a man who could hold the pass against 10,000 men. Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief and praised loudly, "Xiao Bai, good job." Although there were many enemies, in terms of individual strength, they were definitely not as good as Tang Jing and the other two. Although they were slightly weaker in terms of martial prowess, they still managed to eliminate many enemies with their pair of Inferno Underworld Divine Palms. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar rang out. A werewolf leaped out and swiped its sharp claws at Tang Jing. Bang! The War Soul's sword buzzed and trembled from the slap, almost flying out of his hand. Tang Jing was overwhelmed with shock as he stared straight at the werewolf. The other party was obviously taller than the other werewolves, the hair on his body was more lush, and the ferocious light in his eyes was more fierce. "You killed my clansmen, I will tear you apart alive." The werewolf spoke in human language. "You are the leader of these wolf pups. I am the Wolf King." Tang Jing said disdainfully, "Then let's see who rips who apart." Tang Jing tapped the tip of his foot and rushed forward like a cannonball. The Wolf King waved its sharp claws and roared as it charged forward. Clang clang clang. The Wolf King's sharp claws were actually not cut off by the War Soul sword. Instead, sparks flew as they fought. Tang Jing's expression changed slightly. The Wolf King was indeed different from the other werewolves. His strength had increased by a lot, and he was afraid that he had the strength of a great master sage. Tang Jing's blood boiled, his fighting spirit high, and he roared, "Kill!" The heaven-flying immortal sword technique became more and more fierce, and the werewolves were forced to retreat, looking somewhat miserable. Tian Chanzi's cultivation was too high, and with a raise of his hand there were enemies who died in his hands. He leisurely shuttled through the enemies, and one by one they fell at his feet. "Stop him!" Lewis crazily shouted. Whoosh! A fishy wind blew, and directly swept towards Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng stopped and looked at the huge figure behind the fishy wind. His sword-like eyebrows rose, and he said, "A big bat has come, I think you have some ability." He saw that the huge figure was a person, but there were wings on his back. He glided down from the sky and pounced towards Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi raised his hand, and his hand was like a sword. Sword chi surged, and his aura surged. So, the sword chi slashed through the air, and a blood-red light intertwined to form a light screen that rose from the opponent's body. It actually blocked the attack, and then the light screen collapsed. Huh. You really have some ability, and other small bats can't compare to you, Tian Chanzi said in surprise. If the opponent was strong enough to make Tian Chanzi praise him, then he was at least a master of the Grandmaster realm. I am the Blood Ancestor, and I have an immortal body. Today, I will let you have a taste of my power, the opponent said arrogantly. Blood Ancestor, an immortal body? Tian Chanzi snorted. That's because you haven't met me. A monster from the barbarian land, a frog at the bottom of a well, dares to say that you have an immortal body? Even Qin Shi Huang, an emperor of the ancient times, didn't dare to say that he had an immortal body, and the Blood Ancestor from a barbarian land dared to boast so shamelessly, which made Tian Chanzi very unhappy. If he was unhappy, the consequences would be very serious. He disappeared, and the next second, he stood in the air a few meters away from the Blood Ancestor. A trace of surprise flashed across the Blood Ancestor's face. You can fly too? Huh, it's not that difficult. Many years ago, who knows how many cultivators could fly? Your ability is just an insignificant skill, Tian Chanzi said disdainfully. The Blood Ancestor flew into a rage. Nonsense, I will suck your blood dry and make you unable to reincarnate forever. The Blood Ancestor pounced forward again, and his huge wings flapped directly at Tian Chanzi. Tian Chanzi stabbed out with his finger, and an endless amount of sword chi splashed out on the Blood Ancestor's wings, causing sparks to fly. Huh, your skin is quite thick. It didn't hurt you, Tian Chanzi said in surprise. Of course you can't hurt me. 10,000 blood-devouring soul. The Blood Ancestor roared proudly, and a cloud of blood rose from his body, like a cloud of smoke enveloping Tian Chanzi. 10,000 blood-devouring soul, I will devour your soul as well. The Blood Ancestor's eyes intertwined with a bloody and ominous light as he roared fiercely. Is that so? A calm voice sounded from the blood-withering soul. What's going on? The Blood Ancestor's heart trembled. Since his opponent was enveloped in a cloud of blood, shouldn't he be screaming miserably and his soul be scattered? How could he still speak so calmly? Before he could figure out what was going on, he saw Tian Chanzi leisurely walk out of the blood-withering soul, completely unharmed. You. The Blood Ancestor was shocked speechless by this scene. Are you done with your tricks? I really want to see how strong you guys who grew up in this barbarian land are, Tian Chanzi said with a smile. He didn't take the Blood Ancestor seriously at all, and he was deliberately toying with him. Ah! The Blood Ancestor roared. Blood devouring heaven and earth. He clawed at the air, and the blood of the corpses on the ground immediately flew up. Immediately, the entire mountain peak was covered in blood, and an eerie and bloody aura filled the air. Petty tricks, you can't even withstand a single blow. Tian Chanzi glanced contemptuously at the Blood Ancestor and clasped his hands together. When he separated them, an exceptionally bright ball of light gradually appeared in his palms. Break! Tian Chanzi stomped his foot, and the violent power contained in the ball of light exploded and spread in all directions. Bang bang bang! The Blood Ancestor was struck by the thousands of light dots and instantly disintegrated. The Blood Ancestor was also riddled with holes by the light dots, and blood flowed freely. He staggered back, flapped his wings, and fled into the air. Huh? Aren't you immortal? Why are you running away? Tian Chanzi asked jokingly. The Blood Ancestor's pale face became as pale as a monkey's butt. He glared at the bleeding wounds on his body and silently circulated his cultivation technique. The bleeding stopped, and the wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Huh! The wounds healed so quickly. Enchanting was surprised. Even he couldn't heal wounds so quickly. His opponent was indeed unique. Then let's see if I can deal damage faster or if you can heal faster. Enchanting didn't mind and launched a new round of attacks. The Blood Ancestor could only passively take a beating. He finally understood that the difference between him and Enchanting was like the difference between heaven and earth. There was simply no way to compare them. His entire body was dripping with blood, and he was riddled with holes. Every time a wound healed, another one would immediately appear, causing him to be flustered. Enchanting sneered and said, "Hurry up and heal. Aren't you immortal?" The Blood Ancestor was panting like an ox and had no time to respond. He could only constantly circulate his cultivation technique to heal his wounds. Blood had already flowed to the ground, and his face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. His movements were also becoming slower and slower. "I really want to know if you'll die after your blood runs out," Enchanting said with a curious expression. The Blood Ancestor finally couldn't hold on any longer. With a miserable cry, he flapped his wings and flew to the foot of the mountain. "You want to run? I haven't played enough yet." Heaven Monk's face darkened. He extended his finger, and a ball of flame flew out from his fingertip, directly landing on the Blood Ancestor's wings. With a boom, the Blood Ancestor was enveloped by the flames, and continuously cried out miserably in the sky. The Blood Ancestor tried to extinguish the flames, but this was a true fire cultivated by Enchanting. Its quality was even higher than that of Tang Zhang's true fire. How could it be so easy to extinguish? Pung! The Blood Ancestor fell from the sky, causing snow to fly everywhere. He was just about to get up when a foot stepped on his chest, making it impossible for him to move. "Can your immortal body withstand my true fire's refinement?" "If you can, I'll let you go," Enchanting said confidently. "Let me go, let me go." The Blood Ancestor screamed in pain as he tried to break free from Enchanting's restraints, but it was all in vain. A crackling sound could be heard from his body as the flames grew stronger and stronger. Black smoke rose from his body, and his screams gradually disappeared. In the end, only the crackling sound of the flames was left. Finally, the flames were extinguished, leaving behind a black mark on the ground. The Blood Ancestor had been refined to nothing by the true fire. Chapter 759. The destruction of the Blood Ancestor was a huge blow to the Western people. Some of them were already fleeing in all directions. However, with a super expert like Enchanting around, how could these people escape? When Tang Zheng saw this scene, his confidence increased greatly. His battle with the Wolf King had already reached its climax. Although the werewolf was also in the Great Scholar realm, he was still inferior to Tang Zheng. The War Soul sword drew a long sword mark and pierced through the Wolf King's chest. The Wolf King looked at its chest in disbelief, roared, and fell on its back. Tang Zheng pulled back the War Soul sword, ignoring the dying Wolf King. This sword had already pierced through the opponent's heart, so the Wolf King would definitely die. Tang Zheng's gaze locked onto the pillar of light and the black clouds in the sky. Without the injection of blood, the pillar of light dimmed a lot, and the rotation of the black clouds also slowed down. "Destroy this pillar of light first." Tang Zheng slashed out, and the War Soul sword landed on the pillar of light. Kacha! The pillar of light immediately shattered. At the same time, the remaining mottled black spots on the War Soul sword completely collapsed. The War Soul sword emitted all of its light, and the sword light soared into the sky. Wang! A sword cry seemed to pierce through the heavens. There was only this high-pitched sword cry left in the world. Tang Zheng had a feeling that not only did this sword destroy the Pillar of Light, but the power of the Pillar of Light also helped the War Soul sword to complete a complete transformation. Tang Zheng was enlightened. Looking at the buzzing and trembling War Soul sword, he could feel the surging power coming from it. He couldn't help but be secretly speechless. The sword spirit's consciousness has become stronger. The War Soul Sword had always had a sword spirit, and it was connected to Tang Zheng's consciousness. At this moment, the War Soul Sword had completed its transformation, and the sword spirit had also made a huge leap. In fact, when the sword spirit fused with the War Soul Sword, although the sword spirit had a consciousness, in the subsequent battles, the sword spirit's use was not very obvious. Tang Zheng had a feeling that from now on, the War Soul Sword would be able to play a great role. Master, from today onwards, when you fly on your sword, I will be able to control the War Soul Sword on my own. The sword spirit's voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. Really? Tang Zheng was overjoyed at the unexpected news. Flying on the sword had always been a problem that troubled him. Even though he had practiced it many times, he still had not completely mastered it. If he had the help of the sword soul, he could fly on the sword as he wished, and then his strength would rise to another level. Yes, Master, the sword spirit replied solemnly. Tang Zheng looked up at the sky. Although the beam of light had disappeared, the black cloud was still circling around. With a thought, he pointed at the black cloud and shouted, "Break!" Whoosh! The War Soul Sword turned into a sword light and tore through the air. Whoosh! The black cloud was directly split into two by the War Soul Sword. The long sword shuttled back and forth, the sword light intertwined and the black cloud was split into many pieces. Finally, a cold wind blew and the black cloud disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng stared at this scene and commanded the War Soul Sword as if it was his arm. With a thought, the War Soul Sword would respond and make the corresponding movements. His previous Imperial Sword technique could also do this, but it was far from being able to do as he pleased. He stretched out his hand towards the sky. With a flash of sword light, the War Soul Sword returned to his hand. He could not help but caress the War Soul Sword, his emotions surging. Master, how did I do? The sword spirit asked as if it was asking for credit. Tang Zheng hurriedly praised, very good, very good. He turned his gaze and stared at the group of transformed vampires and werewolves. Under the strong attacks of Enchanting and Marshall, they were forced to retreat. Louis, get out here. Let's see how long you can hide. Tang Zheng roared and rushed into the battle with large strides. People continued to fall under his sword. The vampires and werewolves became fewer and fewer. In the end, they completely gathered together, back to back, resisting the attacks from the three of them. Tang Zheng's gaze turned cold, he stared at the figure hiding in the middle of the crowd, and shouted, Louis, I see you, come out. Tang Zheng thrusted out his sword, shwa shwa shwa, the sword light cut off the claws of a few werewolves and vampires, but the other party still did not retreat and swore to protect Louis in the middle. You don't want to come out? Then I'll personally pull you out. Tang Zheng soared into the air, stepping on the War Soul Sword. He was stable, with the heaven-shocking bow and shooting sun arrows in his hands. He looked down from above. Seeing this divine weapon, Louis's face turned abnormally pale, without a trace of blood. Back in the 100,000 Mountains, he had personally witnessed the power of this divine weapon. It had left a deep impression on him, and he still had lingering fears. Cover me! Louis shouted loudly, flapped his wings and flew up, transforming into hundreds of little bats and flying into the distance. Wang! The shooting sun arrows left his hand and fell into the enemy group. Boom! 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 A series of explosions rang out, and clouds of blood mist rose into the air. More than 10 vampires and werewolves died under the shooting sun arrows, while the hundreds of bats had already soared into the sky, flying hundreds of meters into the air and fleeing in all directions. There were too many targets, and they were too scattered. Even if Tang Zheng used the shooting sun arrows, he would not be able to shoot them down one by one. After Tianqianzi finished off the remaining enemies, he crossed his arms, as if he was watching a good show. Obviously, he did not plan to help, but let Tang Zheng take care of it himself. Tang Zheng took a deep breath. He knew that if he were to let Louis escape, then there would be no end of trouble. The other party dared to do such a crazy thing, so he deserved to die. War Soul Sword, it's your turn. Tang Jing descended from the sky and used the Imperial Sword technique. With a so sound, the War Soul Sword turned into a sharp sword light and chased after him. Although the bats were not slow, the War Soul Sword was even faster. With the help of the Sword Spirit, Tang Jing used the Imperial Sword technique with ease. Puff! Puff! Moreover, they were completely enveloped in the attack range of the War Soul Sword. Seeing that the War Soul Sword was about to hit another bat, suddenly, the bat let out a mournful shriek. With a bright light, it transformed into Louis. Tang Jing's eyes lit up. Hey, I finally found you, the real deal. There's nowhere to hide. Kill. The word kill contained boundless killing intent, and when it was integrated into the War Soul Sword, the dazzling sword light even increased the brightness of the sky by a few degrees. Puff! One of Louis's wings was directly cut off, and he staggered and fell to the ground. Just as he was about to struggle to stand up, he was already stepped on by Tang Jing, and the War Soul Sword was pressed against his heart. Louis's face was filled with fear, and he shouted, Tang Jing, don't kill me. If you let me go, I'll agree to any of your conditions. Tang Jing was so angry that he laughed. Louis, you killed so many people, and even sacrificed the lives of tens of thousands of people to achieve your despicable goal, and you still want me to let you go? Do you think that's possible? Louis's eyes turned sneakily, and his expression kept changing as he said, those are all ordinary people, and their deaths are not worth regretting. In life, what we pursue is benefits. If you let me go, I'll give you enough benefits. The more Tang Jing heard, the more furious he became. He stomped down fiercely, and with a few crackling sounds, Louis's chest caved in, and a pig-like scream came out from his throat. My ribs, so you also know pain. Let me tell you, your life is not more valuable than those ordinary people. Since you don't put their lives in your eyes, how can I put your life in my eyes? Tang Jing's killing intent soared. Louis was frightened, and he saw the firm killing intent in Tang Jing's eyes. He knew that things were not good, but he did not give in. A ruthless look flashed in his eyes, and he said, Tang Jing, if you kill me, your girlfriend Fang Shishir will also die. You have to think clearly, she is in the Atlantic Empire. If I die, she will definitely be buried with me. Tang Jing heard this, and was furious. Louis actually dared to use Fang Shishir to threaten him. Seeing Tang Jing's reaction, Louis became complacent. He knew that he had grasped Tang Jing's Achilles heel, and he said, if you let me go, we can still cooperate and live happily in the new world in the future. Otherwise, Fang Shishir will die without a doubt, and you will regret it for the rest of your life. Tang Jing was angry and anxious. Louis was not an alarmist. If he really died, Fang Shishir might really be in danger. If something happened to Fang Shishir, then Tang Jing would really regret it for the rest of his life. But if he let the tiger return to the mountain, then there would be endless trouble in the future. He did not succeed this time, but next time, he would definitely think of a way to use the mountain and river blood sacrifice array in an even more secretive way. At that time, Tang Jing would have no way to investigate, and the demon race would be able to smoothly return. Wouldn't the world be in chaos? Tang Jing shook his head. He absolutely could not allow this to happen. How is it? My condition is fair, right? Louis asked confidently. Tang Jing did not say a word. Marshall knew the worry in his heart, so he held his trembling hand and said, you can't let Shishir take the risk. She knew very well the position Fang Shishir had in his heart. If something really happened to Fang Shishir, it would be hard for her to imagine what the consequences would be. Tang Jing bit his lips. Tian Chanzi looked at him silently, and even the terrorists who were lucky enough to survive looked at him with fear and curiosity. Seeing Tang Jing hesitate, Louis's confidence rose even higher, and he continued to fan the flames. Fang Shishir is a good girl, she likes you so much, you definitely can't just watch as something happens to her, so, this is a win-win situation, why not? The expression in Tang Jing's eyes gradually sharpened as he stared straight at Louis. If you let me go, you will be a friend of the Rockefeller family. Our family has always been very kind to our friends, but we are not so kind to our enemies. Louis threatened. Marshall held Tang Zhang's hand and felt that his palm was sweating. It could be seen how tormented his heart was. Her heart seemed to have been stabbed a few times as she stared at Louis with fire spewing out of her eyes. Louis was the culprit behind all of this. He really wanted to cut him down. Chapter 760. Louis's eyes widened as he watched this scene in disbelief. That cold and sharp sword pierced through his chest, and he could clearly feel the sharp sword in his chest. Fresh blood flowed from the wound, and the heart-wrenching pain caused him to involuntarily scream. You really dare to kill me? Do you want Fang Shishir to die as well? Louis crazily roared. Tang Jing remained unmoved as he coldly said, If I let you go back, will you let Shishir go? Louis was speechless. If he could escape back to the Western Empire, the first thing he would do would be to kill Fang Shishir to vent his anger. He didn't expect Tang Jing to be so smart as to see through this. Seeing his reaction, Tang Jing became more and more certain that his choice was not wrong. After killing you, I will immediately go save Shishir. No matter what difficulties there are, I will pass through them. If something really happens to her, everyone in your Rockefeller family will be buried with her. Tang Zhang's tone was calm, but the killing intent it revealed made people shudder. Last time in the 100,000 mountains, I let you escape. This time, don't even think about escaping. You have an immortal body, right? Then I will turn you into ashes. With a thought, War's soul immediately lit up with a ball of true fire. From the inside out, Louis was completely ignited. Ah ah ah. Miserable screams resounded through the mountain peak as Louis rolled on the ground. After a while, he stopped moving and only the crackling sound of burning could be heard. The flames extinguished, and Louis was also turned into ashes like the blood ancestor. Whoosh! Tang Jing took a long breath as if all the strength in his body had been released. His actions were really risky, but he had no choice. Dong dong dong. A burst of hurried footsteps came from the bottom of the mountain as Su Tian rushed up with a group of people. When he saw the corpses on the ground, his heart trembled. They had finished the battle so quickly. How is it? Su Tian rushed up and asked. They are from the Rockefeller family. They have all been eliminated. As for these terrorists, you can deal with them yourself. Tang Zhang said indifferently. He had no interest in those terrorists hiding in the corner. Killing them was as easy as crushing an ant. Su Tian turned his eyes and immediately locked onto a few faces among the terrorists. His eyes widened in an instant as he exclaimed, It's them. What a great harvest. These people are just like the specter. Normally, it would be impossible to catch them, but this time, we actually caught all of them in one go. It turned out that there was a leader among these terrorists who the country had always wanted to capture. However, these people were mostly hiding abroad or in Tian Shan Mountain. It was impossible to find them normally. Su Tian was extremely excited. He waved his hand and ordered, Capture them all. The soldiers rushed forward like a swarm of bees. The terrorists did not dare to resist at all. With Tang Zhang and the other killing gods around, if they made a move, they would die. Where's the mountain and river blood sacrifice array? Su Tian looked around, but did not see the pillar of light or the black cloud. Tang Jing shook his head and said, It's all destroyed. Su Tian heaved a sigh of relief and said, This kind of heaven-defying formation should not exist in this world. Tang Zhang's heart moved. Since it was not the 100 Transformation Star Lord this time, then the 100 Transformation Star Lord would definitely try his best to use this formation. People. Tang Zhang had a flash of inspiration. In order to use this formation, there had to be enough people. As long as they closely monitored the problem of missing people, they would be able to find some clues. After Su Tian heard Tang Zhang's explanation, he nodded his head in agreement. Don't worry, I will give the order to strictly monitor this information. Then what do we do next? Su Tian asked again. Tang Zhang looked towards the west and said, I want to make a trip to the Atlantic Empire. Huh? Su Tian looked at him suspiciously. The young lord of the Rockefeller family died in my hands. They will definitely make a move against Shusher, so I have to save her. Right, I have to inform her immediately. Tang Jing felt as if he had just woken up from a dream as he dialed Fang Shusher's number. Her lazy voice came from the satellite phone. Shusher, I am Tang Jing. Listen to me, I killed Louis. You must buy the earliest flight back to your country. You must not stay in the Atlantic Empire any longer. Tang Jing said seriously. Fang Shusher's sleepiness immediately disappeared without a trace. You killed Louis? Yes, there is no way to explain it for the time being. In short, he brought it upon himself. In order to prevent the Rockefeller family's revenge, you must leave there. Don't contact anyone else and leave the apartment now. You don't have to bring your luggage. We will keep the phone open at all times. Tang Zheng's voice was urgent and serious. Fang Shusher rarely saw him like this. She knew that this matter was of great importance and did not continue to ask about the details. She simply replied, okay. After hanging up the phone, Tang Jing still could not hide the anxiety between his brows. He said resolutely, I have to rush to the Atlantic Empire immediately. Su Tian knew that the matter was urgent and said, this is our contact in the Atlantic Empire. You might find it useful if you go. He handed Tang Jing a phone number and address. Tang Jing did not refuse. He was unfamiliar with the Atlantic Empire and it was within the Rockefeller family's sphere of influence. It was hard to say what dangers there would be. It was naturally good to have an acquaintance. I'll go with you. Tian Chanzi had seen the strength of the blood ancestor and the werewolf. Perhaps there were even more powerful characters in the other party's lair, so he volunteered. Marshall's face revealed a worried expression. Her identity was the most awkward. She was going to save Fang Shusher. She did not even know how to face Fang Shusher. Tang Zheng was just about to say yes. With Tian Chanzi accompanying them, their chances of success would be much higher. However, before he could say anything, he sensed something and looked towards the east at the same time as Tian Chanzi. It was almost impossible to see the east. The sky was dark, and a terrifying aura descended from the sky. The world was enveloped by this aura, causing one's heart to tremble. Su Tian and Marshall looked at the two of them in confusion and asked, what's wrong? Tian Chanzi's face had already changed. It was serious and pale. Seeing his reaction, the others' hearts thumped. They suddenly had an ominous premonition. Tang Zheng's brows also tightly knitted together. He glanced at Tian Chanzi and said, it seems, there's a problem. A big problem. Tian Chanzi said resolutely. A big problem. Hiss. Tang Jing sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he had sensed something, he could not see it clearly. However, the uneasy feeling in his heart was very strong. He had a premonition that something big must have happened. I must go take a look. Tian Chanzi retracted his gaze and looked at Tang Jing. You go. This matter must be very important. As for going to the Atlantic Empire, I can do it alone. It shouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, Shusher has already received my call. Maybe before I reach the Atlantic Empire, she will already be back. Tang Jing comforted himself. Tian Chanzi patted Tang Jing's shoulder and warned, take care of yourself. Whoosh. Tian Chanzi flew away. Like a stream of light, he flew away from the top of the mountain and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The other people from the National Security Bureau were dumbfounded as they watched this scene. Flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground was not a legend. People could really fly by themselves. Su Tian worriedly asked, what happened? Tang Zheng looked dignified and shook his head, I can't explain it clearly, but it's definitely not a good thing. When you go back, you must collect more information about the East. I have a premonition that something big is going to happen. The big thing that Tang Zheng said was definitely not an ordinary big thing. Su Tian was deeply worried. This was really an eventful period. They had just stopped the Rockefeller family's conspiracy, and now there was another incident. He fiercely gritted his teeth and said, "Tang Zheng, you can rest assured that I will do my best to collect information." After he finished speaking, he also stared intently at the east. But he still couldn't find any clues. "Tang Zheng, I'll go with you to the Atlantic Empire." Wu finally made up his mind and volunteered. Tang Zheng shook his head. "You and Chief Su return to the capital together. This time, I will go alone. There won't be any danger, so don't worry." Wu hesitated, but in the end, he swallowed his words and nodded, "Then be careful and keep in touch." Zhi. Suddenly, Xiaobai rushed out from the crowd and jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder. It pointed to the east with its little claws and squeaked. Tang Zheng sighed and said, "You also felt it?" Xiaobai nodded and squeaked non-stop. However, it couldn't speak and couldn't express its meaning. Tang Zheng patted its little head and said, "Tian Chanzi has already gone. Even if something really happens, he should be able to handle it. As for the two of us, this time, we will charge into the Atlantic Empire alone to save Shishir." Xiaobai's eyes lit up as it jumped up and down on his shoulder. It was obvious that it was very satisfied with this operation. A group of people escorted the terrorists down the mountain, and there were still tens of thousands of innocent people gathered at the foot of the mountain. However, the soldiers were comforting them one by one, and the situation was already under control. Suing Tian looked at the group of people worriedly and said, "After seeing the scene just now, I'm afraid that many of them will have repercussions for the rest of their lives." Tang Zheng knew that he was referring to the scene of the massacre. The group of people who did not hesitate to cut their throats and take their blood would probably cause many people to collapse. Tang Zheng was helpless and said, "I'll leave the aftermath to you guys. This is part of our duty. Take care of yourself." Suing Tian warned. Tang Zheng nodded. There were no direct flights to the Atlantic Empire in the northwest. Since he was already at the border of the country, he might as well directly cross the Heavenly Mountains and rush to the Atlantic Empire. The Atlantic Empire was very far away, and there was still a long way to go from Huaxia. He planned to cross the Heavenly Mountains and wait for an opportunity to board a foreign plane to reach the Atlantic Empire. In short, he didn't want to waste any time. Chapter 761. Tang Zheng had already snuck into the neighboring country and was on the phone with Fang Shishir. She had already boarded the plane. Immediately, Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was alarmed for nothing. The Rockefeller family's reaction was not that fast. Fortunately, he had informed her in time, and Shishir had seized the opportunity to withdraw. In the distance, he had already seen an airport. Originally, he wanted to take the opportunity to enter the airport and then look for a direct flight to the Atlantic Empire. Now, it seemed that there was no need. He was worried about what had happened in the east, so he dialed Tian Chanzi's phone, but found that no one answered. He could not help but feel deeply worried in his heart. Ring ring ring. Suddenly, the phone rang again. His nerves suddenly trembled, and he quickly picked it up. "Tang Zheng, my plane suddenly turned back." Fang Shishir's anxious voice sounded. Tang Zheng was shocked. "What, turned back?" "Yes, there was no announcement on the radio. I found some clues outside the window. I am now in the bathroom, quietly calling you." Tang Zheng's heart tightened. Damn, it seems that the Rockefeller family already knows that something has happened, so they ordered the flight to turn back. The Rockefeller family's power was enormous, and their influence was immeasurable. They could easily find an excuse to order the flight to turn back. You must be more careful. Don't trust anyone. Once you get off the plane, take the opportunity to slip away. They will definitely send people to chase and intercept you. Don't let them succeed, understand? Tang Zheng warned. "I know, I will be careful. Sure, I will immediately take the plane to find you. Hang in there, believe me, I will definitely bring you back safe and sound." "I believe you, I will wait for you," Fang Shishir said in a relaxed tone. After hanging up the phone, Tang Jing felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. He gritted his teeth and ran toward the airport in the distance. It seemed that he still had to take a plane to the Atlantic Empire. He walked around the airport and found a direct flight to the capital of the Atlantic Empire. However, he was an illegal immigrant and did not have any legal documents. However, this was not a problem for him. He saw that a person's ticket was for this flight, so he stole the ticket and stuffed enough money in the other person's pocket to make up for his loss. Then, he used illusion to disguise himself as the other person and swaggered onto the plane. As the plane roared into the sky, Tang Zheng's heart was still a little nervous. When he dialed Fang Shishi's number in the bathroom, but no one answered, his heart was even more confused. Something must have happened. Something must have happened. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ignored my call. Tang Zheng clenched his fists. More than 10 hours later, the plane landed in Watson, the capital of the Atlantic Empire. Tang Zheng went through customs and walked out of the airport. He called again, but there was still no response. Tang Zheng looked around. He was in a foreign country and was unfamiliar with the place. He did not know where to go and where to find Fang Shishi. He knew where Fang Shishi's school and residence was, but if he went there now, he was afraid that he would not find anything. He thought of the note that Su Tian gave him. He took it out and took a look. He got into a taxi and went straight to the address on the note. Fortunately, his grades were good and he was familiar with English. Even in a foreign country, he would not be unable to move because of the language barrier. An hour later, he arrived at his destination. It was a residential area and a small building stood in front of him. Ding dong. He pressed the doorbell. A middle-aged man opened the door and looked at him in a friendly manner. Tang Zheng looked at the man in front of him suspiciously. He had the typical appearance of a middle-aged man with a beer belly, messy hair, and dull eyes. Was this the person he was looking for? But this was the address that Su Tian gave him. "Hello, I'm looking for Mr. Ding Liang," Tang Zheng said in English. "That's me," the man said with a smile. His small eyes narrowed into slits. "May I ask who you are?" "I was introduced by Su Tian." Tang Zheng did not expect that the man was the person he was looking for. He did not look like the tall and handsome spy at all. He looked more like an ordinary person. However, he did not have time to beat around the bush and said directly. As soon as the 3 words, Su Tian, came out, Ding Liang's lazy eyes immediately burst out a sharp gaze. His temperament changed dramatically. Tang Zheng's eyes narrowed slightly. He thought that the disguise was really good. This was his true face. "Who are you?" Ding Liang asked warily. "Tang Zheng." Ding Liang's pupils shrank and revealed a look of awe. He quickly let him in and said, "Director Su has already informed me and asked me to cooperate with you." Ding Liang still remembered Su Tian's solemn instructions. He asked him to help Tang Zheng at all costs and pointed out that Tang Zheng was a special consultant of the National Security Bureau. Although Ding Liang was abroad, he had heard a lot of things in the country. He had heard a little about Tang Zheng and knew that the other party was a super strong person. He was a spy planted in the Atlantic Empire by the National Security Bureau. It had been decades. He had already integrated into the life here and no one doubted his identity. "Then do you know anything about a returning passenger plane that left for China today? Let's talk in the basement." Ding Liang pressed a book on the bookshelf. The bookshelf flipped and revealed a deep tunnel. Through the tunnel, they came to a sealed space. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. This was a real spy. He saw that there were all kinds of instruments, screens, different kinds of firearms, and even bombs in the basement. The equipment was extremely sophisticated. Seeing Tang Zheng's gaze sweep over these things, Ding Liang's eyes revealed a trace of pride. "These are all prepared for you. You can take anything you need." Tang Zheng didn't know what kind of situation he would encounter. "I want all the weapons." There would definitely be a big battle this time. Tang Zheng didn't want to waste his true energy casually. It couldn't be better to have the assistance of these firearms and explosives. Can you take them? Ding Liang asked in disbelief. Tang Jing didn't hide his strength. He walked over and waved his hand. The summer world on his wrist lit up and all the weapons disappeared without a trace. Ah! Ding Liang opened his mouth wide and screamed. He immediately covered his mouth, but the shock in his eyes was enough to explain his mood. Tang Jing didn't find it strange. What about the flight? Ding Liang woke up from a dream. He quickly opened a computer and said, "This flight was forced to return because of a malfunction. The people have been evacuated. But there is one thing worth noting. It seems that there was a riot during the evacuation." How could there be a riot? Usually at this time there would be people scrambling to escape. It was inevitable that there would be a riot. But it was said that the police had been waiting there for a long time. The picture was a picture of the plane after it landed. The scene was very chaotic. Wait a minute. Look at that picture. Tang Jing suddenly shouted. Ding Liang turned back. Tang Jing's eyes immediately fixed on a blurry figure. His eyelids twitched uneasily. What's wrong? Tang Jing pointed at the figure and said, "This person is very important to me. I want to find her." Although he didn't see the face, Tang Jing recognized the figure from the back. It was Fang Shishir. More importantly, she was caught by a police officer. Seeing this scene, Tang Jing's head fiercely twitched. It seemed that Fang Shishir's luck wasn't good. She didn't escape. Ding Liang leaned closer to the screen. He squinted his small eyes and stared at Fang Shishir's back. He shook his head and said, "It's difficult. There's no front photo." "Here it is." Tang Jing quickly pulled up Fang Shishir's photo from his phone. "It's her." Ding Liang's eyes lit up. He sincerely praised, "So beautiful." After a pause, he said, "Since she was caught by the police, she must be at the police station. I'll make a call." A moment later, Ding Liang hung up the phone. His pair of thick eyebrows twisted. He shook his head in confusion. There's no such person in the police station. It said that no Asian woman was caught today. Strange. Tang Jing didn't expect to find any clues from the police station. He directly said, "Where's the Rockefeller family?" "Rockefeller family?" Ding Liang was shocked. He stared at him. "Why are you looking for them?" "They're the oldest family in the financial group. Ordinary people can't afford to provoke them." "I'm not an ordinary person," Tang Jing said with a murderous look. "You just need to tell me where their base is." "This." Ding Liang hesitated. Tang Jing raised his eyebrows. He asked in a dignified manner, "Is there a problem?" Ding Liang's heart tightened. He remembered Su Yingtian's instructions to satisfy all his needs. Thus, he said, "Okay, I'll tell you. Their manor is in the suburbs of Watson. It's like an independent kingdom. It's guarded by the most elite forces in the world. Not even a fly can fly in." Ding Liang seemed to be afraid that Tang Jing didn't know the dangers of the Rockefeller family. He deliberately emphasized his tone, but it wasn't an alarmist. Tang Jing remained unmoved. "I'm not familiar with the place. You send me there. We'll leave immediately." Ding Liang opened his mouth in disbelief. "You're really going to break into the Rockefeller family? They took my woman. Even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I'm going to break in," Tang Jing said resolutely. Ding Liang subconsciously looked at the back of that figure. He thought that her charm was too great. She could actually make him risk his life. "If you're not willing, then I'll go by myself," Tang Jing said. He didn't want to force him. "How can that be? Since Chief Su gave me the task, I naturally have to complete it to the letter. I'll send you there. I haven't fought in a long time. I've long wanted to take a shot." Ding Liang's chubby cheeks gradually turned red. Ding Liang drove the car. The two headed straight for the suburbs of Watson. Tang Zheng looked at the tall buildings outside the window. This country was indeed more powerful and prosperous than Huaxia. However, he believed that one day, Huaxia would surpass the Atlantic Empire. Chapter 762. Looking at the manor in front of him, Tang Jing could feel from afar how tight the security was. It was a combination of light and dark, who knows how many people were lying in ambush. This manor uses the most advanced infrared detection technology. No living thing can quietly sneak in. For so many years, those who dared to take the risk to sneak in have all died. Ding Liang explained in awe. Infrared. Tang Jing glanced at it and did not find anything strange, but it was clearly something that the human eye could not detect. Are you sure you want to go in? Ding Liang worriedly asked. Tang Jing nodded without hesitation and solemnly said, "Wait for me outside. If you find any danger, immediately leave." Ding Liang asked in surprise, "How can that be? Aren't we going in together?" Tang Jing shook his head. "It is enough that you brought me here. The rest of the adventure will be mine alone." Ding Liang still wanted to argue, but seeing Tang Jing's firm eyes, he swallowed his words and solemnly said, "Then you must be careful." Tang Jing silently blended into the night, circulating his internal energy, lowering his body temperature to the lowest, no different from the surrounding flowers and trees. When he passed through the first thicket and did not hear any alarm, his heart immediately settled back into his stomach. It seems that the method to avoid the infrared was feasible. In front of him was a tall courtyard wall. He was preparing to go over when he heard a burst of footsteps and quickly hid in the thicket, only to see a group of people armed to the teeth walking over. Patrol team. Tang Zheng held his breath, not making the slightest sound, almost perfectly blending in with the outside environment, evading the patrol team. Seeing that the patrol team had gone far away, Tang Zheng once again quietly went over the courtyard wall, arriving inside the manor. Looking around, it was actually a magnificent castle, revealing the vicissitudes of history. Moreover, there were more patrol teams here, advancing step by step. However, this did not stump Tang Zheng. He was like a ghost, sneaking into the castle without anyone noticing. The structure of the castle was complex and there were many rooms. Tang Zheng had no idea where to start. Coincidentally, he saw a person walking over. He pulled the other person into the darkness and interrogated him about Fang Shishi's whereabouts. The other party looked at Tang Zheng in horror, apparently not expecting that someone would be so bold as to sneak into the manor of the Rockefeller family. Seeing that he refused to say anything, Tang Zheng did not waste any more time. He directly used the soul-searching technique and searched for all the information in his mind. There was no information about Fang Shishi, but there was a lot of information about the castle and the Rockefeller family. Could it be that Shishi was not sent here? Tang Jing furrowed his brows. No, since the Rockefeller family spent so much effort to catch her, she should have been brought back here. Tang Jing firmly believed, twisted the other party's neck, and then pondered. There is a dungeon in this castle dedicated to holding people. Maybe there will be clues there. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed. After dealing with the body, he went straight to his destination. This manor adopted a defensive strategy of tight on the outside and loose on the inside. There were countless patrols outside, but there were fewer people inside the castle, and the defense was very weak. Perhaps, the Rockefeller family did not think that anyone could quietly break through the layers of defense outside. The dungeon was dark and gloomy. What entered Tang Zheng's eyes was a pitch-black prison cell. He did not know who had been imprisoned here before. Tang Zheng looked around but did not find a single clue. He did not even see a ghost. He was disappointed and was about to leave the dungeon when his nose suddenly twitched, and a faint smell of blood entered his nostrils. Why is there a smell of blood? Tang Zheng looked around and did not find any trace of blood. This dungeon seemed to have been abandoned for many years. How could there be such a fresh smell of blood in an abandoned dungeon? There must be a demon behind this abnormality. He was not in a hurry to leave, but followed the smell of blood. After a while, he locked onto a wall. The smell of blood was coming from this wall. He put his palms on the wall, and a cold feeling spread from his palms to his whole body, making him involuntarily shiver. There must be something behind the wall. He listened carefully, but there was no sound. Just now, that person's mind did not have any information about what was behind the wall, which indicates that it may be a very secret place. Could Shirshir have been brought in? Tang Zheng was not sure, but there was a glimmer of hope. He would not give up, so his palm glowed with a golden light, and he suddenly inserted it into the gap between the bricks on the wall. As if he was cutting tofu, there was no resistance at all. He directly removed a brick. A ray of light extended out from the hole, accompanied by an even stronger smell of blood that assailed his nostrils. Looking through the hole, it was a very spacious place. There were many large glass containers, but he could not see what was inside. Not seeing any enemies, Tang Zheng quickly removed a few more bricks, and then went in. Looking up, it was a large room. There were only many glass containers inside, and there was not a single guard. Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief and walked in front of the glass container. When he looked up at the glass container, he could not help but take a few steps back in fright, and almost screamed out loud. His breathing became rapid, and he stared straight at the glass container. What is this? He saw that inside the glass container was a young woman, and her body was covered with tubes. Blood flowed out of the tubes little by little, and finally flowed out of the container along a special pipe. He did not know where it flowed. The young woman's eyes were closed, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted. She did not seem to have much consciousness, but she was still alive. Tang Zheng hurriedly ran to the other glass containers. Suddenly, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. These glass containers were all young women, and their bodies were all covered with tubes, and their blood was being extracted. No wonder I can smell the faint smell of blood even though there is only a wall between us. Is this still something a human would do? They are actually extracting the blood of living people. The Rockefeller family were vampires, and they relied on drinking human blood to maintain their life and strength. These human blood that was being extracted must be supplied to the Rockefeller family. Tang Zheng was furious, and his eyes were almost spewing fire. They really are a group of beasts. They really should go to the 18th level of hell. Tang Zheng said fiercely. He wanted to rescue these people, but that would be completely exposed, and these people may not be able to survive. First find Shirshir, then come back to save them. Tang Zheng pushed the door open and went out in a flash. The light outside was very dim, and it took a while for Tang Zheng to adapt to the darkness. But he immediately widened his eyes and saw that the room was filled with stone coffins, and it was very gloomy. Could this be a tomb? Tang Zheng was shocked. There were a total of 9 stone coffins in the room, which meant that there were 9 people. Didn't the Rockefeller family boast of being immortal? Why are there stone coffins? He was puzzled and was about to leave the room when he found that there were tubes on the ground. Dark red blood flowed through these tubes into the stone coffins. Tang Zheng had an idea and was shocked. These stone coffins are vampires. So this is not a tomb. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, there was a bang, and a stone coffin lid flew up and hit Tang Zheng. He immediately dodged, and the lid of the stone coffin hit the wall with a loud bang. Immediately, as if a drop of water had fallen into boiling oil, there was a reaction. The other stone coffins immediately creaked, and the lid of the stone coffins were all pushed open from the inside. F***ck, so many vampires. It seems like we have to start a massacre. Tang Zheng swung his arm and the War Soul sword appeared in his hand. He took the initiative and jumped onto a stone coffin. A pale white hand reached out from the stone coffin and grabbed Tang Zheng's neck. Puff! Tang Zheng's hand was like lightning, and the War Soul sword directly cut off the arm. Then, with a flash of sword light, the War Soul sword pierced through the heart of the vampire who was trying to climb out, and the true fire spread from the War Soul sword to his body. In an instant, the other party turned into a ball of fire. He let out a heart-wrenching scream and struggled to climb out of the stone coffin. The light of the fire illuminated the surroundings, allowing Tang Zheng to clearly see his surroundings. He saw that the remaining 8 vampires had climbed out of the sarcophagus, and pairs of gloomy and cold eyes were firmly staring at Tang Zheng, like a tiger eyeing its prey. "Who are you? How dare you barge in here?" a vampire asked with a murderous aura. Tang Zheng coldly snorted, too lazy to talk nonsense with the other party. He only wanted to end the battle quickly. With a flick of his wrist, a dazzling sword flower appeared, and a sharp sword attacked the group of vampires. Vampires were not undeserving of their reputation. Their movements were very fast, dodging and moving, and their cooperation was very tacit. In an instant, the two sides were locked in a fierce battle. Tang Zheng was a little anxious. With such a big movement, he didn't know if the others had noticed. "No, I have to end this quickly." He took a deep breath, and his attack suddenly became even more fierce. Moreover, the War Soul's sword was burning with true fire, and when it came into contact with the vampire, the sparks of fire immediately ignited, turning the other party into a flaming man. Another 3 vampires were refined into ashes by the true fire. When the remaining 5 vampires saw this, they looked at each other in dismay. This Easterner actually had such a powerful strength at such a young age. Even if they had the advantage of numbers, if they continued to be in a stalemate, they would definitely not be able to gain any benefits. "Inform the primogenitor," one of the vampires shouted. Instantly, the vampires opened the door and went out. "Stop!" Tang Zheng secretly cursed. He wanted to stop them, but he was powerless and was stopped by the other vampires. He didn't know who the ancestor was, but when he thought about the blood ancestor, he knew that the ancestor was definitely a higher level vampire and was even stronger. Chapter 763. Seeing that there was a fish that slipped through the net, Tang Zheng used his killing move. Puff puff puff, he directly chopped off 3 huge heads, leaving only 1 vampire. Seeing this, the vampire turned pale with fright. He actually did not dare to fight back and retreated out of the room in an attempt to escape. Tang Zheng followed like a shadow. The War Soul sword flew out and directly pierced through the vampire's chest. With a plop, the vampire fell to the ground and turned into a ball of flames. Tang Zheng looked up and sucked in a breath of cold air. This was an even bigger basement that occupied a large area and was brightly lit. At a glance, he saw a few young girls tied to a few pillars. However, these were all corpses. The ground was covered in blood. It was obvious that all of their blood had been sucked dry. Tang Zheng was furious. This group of vampires was really a group of beasts. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind swept over his head. His eyelids rolled and he immediately saw a huge black shadow descending from the sky. A feeling of unease surfaced in his heart. He quickly raised the War Soul sword. Swish! The sword light soared into the sky and directly slashed at the huge black shadow. Bang! A powerful force rushed over. Tang Zheng had no choice but to retreat a few steps before he could stand firm. The huge black shadow also landed on the ground. The black shadow was wearing a huge cloak. His face could not be seen clearly, but the nails that stretched out from his sleeves were cold and shiny like sharp blades. "Who are you?" the black shadow asked in a deep voice. "Where did you hide, Fong Shishir?" Tang Zheng knew that the other party was definitely not a small character. It could be seen from his imposing manner, so he asked straightforwardly. "Are you here to find that girl?" The black shadow's voice became more and more fierce. Tang Zheng's heart moved. The other party really did know about Shishir. This meant that he did not find the wrong place. She was really in this castle. "Yes, hand over Shishir and I can let you die a little faster." "Huh, you really know how to joke. This is the Rockefeller family. You still want to kill me? Don't worry, once I catch you, I'll hand you over to the primogenitor. You'll die with that girl. Dying at the hands of the primogenitor is a great honor for you." Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He had thought that the other party was the primogenitor, but it seemed that he had overestimated him. So you're just a lackey under the first ancestor. You dare to boast so shamelessly? Tang Zheng said disdainfully. Nonsense, I am a prince under the primogenitor. The Black Shadow angrily introduced himself. What's the rank of Grand Prince? How does it compare to the Blood Ancestor? Tang Zheng was confused. The Grand Prince hesitated for a moment before saying, the Blood Ancestor is stronger than me, but I alone am enough to deal with you. The Blood Ancestor and the young lord died in your Huaxia. Now, I will kill you to avenge the young lord. Tang Zheng relaxed a little. He had seen how powerful the Blood Ancestor was. He had been in a stalemate with Tian Chanzi for a long time before dying, which meant that the Blood Ancestor was truly powerful. This Grand Prince was slightly weaker than the Blood Ancestor, so Tang Zheng was confident that he could kill the other party. Tang Zheng gave a cold laugh as his sword light flickered as he attacked. Heaven flying immortal, the sword light instantly locked onto the Grand Prince. Ping, ping, pang, pang, the war soul and the Grand Prince exchanged dozens of blows. Tang Zheng became more and more courageous as he fought, closing in on his opponent step by step. The Grand Prince retreated as he fought, his heart surging. Seeing another sword light slash at him, he hurriedly dodged. More than half of the cloak on his body was cut off, revealing his true appearance. His cheeks were full of wrinkles and he looked extremely old, but his eyes were extremely cold and filled with an ominous glint. The Grand Prince was flustered and exasperated. Tang Zheng's strength had exceeded his expectations. Just now, when the primogenitor heard that there was an enemy invasion, he did not take it to heart and sent him to deal with it. Who would have thought that this person was too difficult for him to handle? The war soul slashed at the opponent again, but it missed. The war soul flew straight into the wall, deeply embedding itself in it. Seeing this, the Grand Prince was overjoyed. He laughed sinisterly. Now that you don't have a weapon, let's see what you can do. With a shake of his hands, they transformed into two pitch-black wings. With lightning speed, he rushed towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was unmoved, as if he was scared silly. The Grand Prince was determined to win, and had already prepared a killing move. Suddenly, an ominous premonition rose in his heart. Before he could understand what was going on, a heart-wrenching pain spread from his back to his chest. Ah! He looked at the sword tip that pierced through his chest in disbelief. Wasn't this sword stuck in the wall? Why was it stuck in his chest? He had not seen Tang Zheng use the Imperial Sword technique before. Tang Zheng caught him off guard and used the Imperial Sword technique to subdue the enemy. Tang Zheng's body flashed and appeared on the Grand Prince's body. Like a dragon's claw, his palm grabbed the Grand Prince's head and used the soul-searching technique. The Grand Prince wanted to resist, but he felt a wave of dizziness in his head, as if something was being pulled out of his body. Let go of me! He roared unwillingly. Tang Zheng had already gotten the information he wanted. Seeing that the Grand Prince did not become a fool because of the soul-searching technique, he could not help but be secretly speechless. The Grand Prince's cultivation was not weak. He could actually resist the side effects of the soul-searching technique. However, he did not intend to leave him alive. With a thought, the true fire seeped out of his palm and directly wrapped around the Grand Prince's head. Then, with the power of a prairie fire, it instantly enveloped his entire body. Tang Zheng withdrew the war soul and watched as the Grand Prince turned into ashes. However, he was not happy. He already knew the whereabouts of Feng Shishir. She was in the room of the ancestor on the highest floor of the castle. The ancestor was the head of the Rockefeller family and Louis's father. He was the most powerful existence in the Vampire Scissors, almost equivalent to a 7th-level Supreme Power Master. Tang Zheng was only a 2nd-level Supreme Power Master. Although he had a divine weapon in his hand, there was still a big gap between him and a 7th-level Supreme Power Master. If he attacked forcefully, he might not be able to save Shishir, so he had to use his wits. In addition, there were many vampires and werewolves in the castle. This was also a very powerful armed force. If he wanted to reach the ancestors' room, he had to pass through layers of obstacles. I have to use my wits. Tang Jing clenched his teeth and muttered in his heart. Suddenly, he had an idea and was pleasantly surprised. I've got it. He quickly took out the explosives from Sumeru World and fixed them on the wall pillars. He said hatefully, I'll blow you guys up into the sky and create a diversion. Naturally, I'll be able to attract their attention. Fortunately, Ding Liang had prepared these good guys for him. Otherwise, even if he had thought of this method, he would have been helpless. After installing the explosives, he sneaked back to the previous room and rescued all the young girls from the glass containers. They were still unconscious. Tang Jing directly kept them in Sumeru World and prepared to let them go after he left. Sumeru World was different from the Sumeru bag. Sumeru World could absorb living things, and it came in handy at this moment. Coming out of the dungeon, he was met with a group of vampires and werewolves. The other party directly attacked him. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to use War Soul. Instead, he held the gun with both hands. 2 flames swallowed and spat out. Pang, 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 pang. Bullets flew out of the chamber and hit the vampires and werewolves. The opponents staggered backwards as Tang Zheng's firepower was simply too fierce. He didn't even need to change the magazine. Once the gun ran out of bullets, his hands loosened and a new gun reappeared in his hands. He pulled the trigger, and the sound of gunfire rang out. The werewolves had rough skin and thick flesh. The vampires could quickly heal their wounds, but they could not withstand such a fierce rain of bullets. One by one, they cried out in pain. The pain was so real that they were forced to stagger back. This great battle was earth-shattering, completely breaking the manor's peace. Many people rushed over from all directions. As for the people in the castle, they quickly rushed towards Tang Zheng in an attempt to kill him. At the top of the castle, there was only one room on this entire floor. It was incomparably large, luxurious and elegant. Fang Shishir sat on a chair. Her hands were fixed and she could not move. Her pair of eyes stared hatefully at the middle-aged man in front of her. The patriarch of the Rockefeller family, the most powerful existence in the blood race, primogenitor. Fang Shishir had tried to escape at the airport. She had never relaxed her cultivation. Now, she was already a first-grade Anidia cultivator. At that time, Tian Chanzi did not misjudge her. She was indeed very suitable for cultivation. Moreover, the cultivation technique that Tian Chanzi taught her was also very suitable for her body, causing her cultivation to steadily increase. Of course, this speed was already the speed of a rocket compared to ordinary people. However, the other party was already prepared. He caught her off guard and caused her escape plan to fail. Then, she was brought here and saw the man in front of her. She had once seen a picture of this man in a report. He was a world-renowned successful person. He was the patriarch of the Rockefeller family. Many people had to bow down to him. Even the politicians of the Atlantic Empire were incomparably respectful to him. He could even influence the outcome of the presidential election. All in all, this was a very powerful person. Fang Shishir did not have the slightest bit of caution and fear when facing a powerful person. She already knew that the other party was a vampire. He had to rely on drinking human blood to survive and maintain his strength. Therefore, Fang Shishir was not afraid of him. Instead, she looked down on him from the bottom of her heart. Hearing the fierce gunshots and fighting coming from downstairs, her expression was normal. However, she was very excited. She guessed that Tang Zheng must have come to save her. There was only one person in the world who dared to enter the tiger's den to save her, and that was Tang Zheng. From the moment she was captured, she knew that Tang Zheng would definitely come. Because, he was her hero. Her hero for life. The ancestor looked at Fang Shishir overbearingly. When Louis was alive, he often talked about you and praised you. He said that you were different from other girls and had a special aura and feeling. But in the end, he died at the hands of your Huaxia people. Died at the hands of your boyfriend. There was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Logically speaking, the other party should not know what happened at the peak of Sky Mountain. After all, their people had been wiped out. However, the ancestors seemed to know everything clearly. He placed all his hatred on Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng is downstairs right now. I will make him pay a painful price for Louis's death. The price is not only his life, but also yours. I will make him watch you die. I will make him suffer so much that he will wish he was dead. I will only kill him after I have tortured him enough, the ancestor said coldly. Fang Shishir was unmoved. She raised her head like a proud swan and looked at him fearlessly. Bang! Chapter 764. The deafening explosion caused the castle to shake violently as if there was an earthquake. The ancestor's expression changed slightly and he snorted angrily. How dare he use explosives to destroy my castle? I will make him pay 1,000 times the price. Fang Shishir smiled proudly and looked at the door, waiting for Tang Zheng to rush in. In the explosion, the ground had sunk a lot, and many enemies were sent flying in all directions. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to break through the layers of defense, leaving the werewolves and vampires behind, and rushed to the top floor of the castle. Stop him. The enemies quickly caught up, but their speed was no match for Tang Zheng's. Whoosh! Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks, took a deep breath, and stared at the tightly shut door. He had already arrived at the highest level. That huge scarlet door was like a bloody mouth, making one's hair stand on end. Fang Shishir was locked inside, and he could save her if he rushed in. However, he knew very well that behind the door would be 1,000 times more dangerous, but he still kicked the door without hesitation. Bang! The door fell off and flew out. Tang Zheng's figure flashed and rushed into the room. His spirit was highly tensed. At this moment, the pursuers arrived and stopped at the door, glaring angrily. However, they did not enter through the door, as if it was a pool of lightning, and they would not take half a step into it. Huh? Tang Zheng frowned suspiciously, and his gaze fell on Fang Shishir and another middle-aged man in the middle of the room. Seeing that Fang Shishir was safe and sound, he was greatly relieved and could not wait to call out, Shishir, how are you? Since Tang Zheng appeared, Fang Shishir's mouth was brimming with a smile, and she said firmly, I'm fine. The stone in Tang Zheng's hand fell a little further, and his pupils shrank as he stared at the middle-aged man, recognizing that he was the ancestor at a glance. This was the impression in the prince's mind, as if it had become his own. Fang Shishir couldn't move, and Tang Zheng didn't act rashly. Instead, he looked at the ancestor warily. The primogenitor also looked at him and compared him with the information. In the end, he had no choice but to admit that the other party was a little too young. Hua Xia was indeed a land blessed by illustrious heroes to have nurtured such a powerful character. You killed my son. The primogenitor was the first to speak. Tang Zheng remained unmoved and coldly said, Louis committed a heinous crime. He deserved to die. You don't have the right to judge my son. The primogenitor stomped his foot, creating a huge crater in the ground. Tang Zheng snorted and said, the one to judge him is the world's justice, not me. What a glib tongue. I will make you suffer and watch as your beloved woman dies. The ancestor said with killing intent. Tang Zheng raised his war soul sword and said, you can give it a try. Do you think you can stop me? I want to suck her blood dry. The blood of a young girl is the most delicious. The primogenitor licked his lips with his scarlet tongue and said, in your dreams. Tang Zheng took the initiative and rushed forward with a shout. The war soul sword lit up with a dazzling light and pierced towards the primogenitor. The primogenitor waved his hand and a fishy wind swept over. Tang Zheng fiercely collided with this fishy wind and flew backwards. The primogenitor laughed sinisterly and opened his mouth. Two long fangs stretched out and fiercely bit towards Fang Shishir's neck. No! Tang Zheng turned pale with fright and screamed. His hand loosened and the war soul sword flew towards the primogenitor. The primogenitor glanced at it from the corner of his eyes and suddenly waved his hand. The fishy wind blew and the war soul sword could no longer move forward. The primogenitor sneered and ordered, "Capture him." The werewolves and vampires outside the door rushed forward without a care for their own safety. Like a tide, they surged towards Tang Zheng. "Xiao Bai!" Tang Zheng bellowed, the Sumera heavens flashed slightly, and Xiao Bai rushed out from the Sumera heavens, spitting out a ball of flame, immediately igniting the enemy at the front. Miserable screams immediately resounded through the clouds, and the enemy's attack immediately slowed down. Tang Zheng took this opportunity and fiercely leaped forward, flying towards the primogenitor. Holding onto the war soul sword, he used the heaven-flying immortal, and in an instant, all of the sword chi condensed on the tip of the sword, thrusting forward. However, that fishy wind was like an unbreakable shield. Even though he used all of his skills, he did not immediately break through. "Stop!" Tang Zheng roared at the top of his lungs, because he saw that the two fangs had already bitten onto Fang Shishi's neck. The primogenitor raised his head and sneered at him, saying, "I will suck the blood of the woman, the withered flowers. This is truly a pity, but it is also the most beautiful scenery in the world." With that, the ancestor bit down hard, his fangs piercing deep into Fang Shishi's fair skin. "Ah!" Fang Shishi's beautiful eyebrows were tightly knitted together as she let out a heart-wrenching scream. Tang Zheng's eyes were bloodshot as he roared furiously, "I'm going to kill you, break!" He gathered all of his true chi and released it in one go. It turned into sword chi and attacked the fishy wind. Bang! As the stench dissipated, Tang Zheng charged at the primogenitor with his sword in hand. A strange look flashed past the ancestor's eyes. Just as he was about to attack, the war soul sword had already left Tang Zheng's hand and slashed over. At the same time, another weapon appeared in Tang Zheng's hands, heaven-shocking bow and sun-shooting arrow. When he saw the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows, the ancestor's eyelids twitched. He felt uneasy and felt a trace of danger. He had no choice but to let go of Fang Shishi. Although it had only been a short while, a lot of Fang Shishi's blood had already been sucked away. His face was as pale as paper, his eyes were dim and colorless, and his expression was dispirited. However, she still opened her eyes and looked at the angry Tang Zheng. Instead, a smile appeared on her face. In this life, if there was a man who did not hesitate to give up his life for her, then her life would be enough. The ancestor blocked the war soul sword's attack with one move, but his eyes were fixed on the heaven-shocking bow. The bowstring trembled, and the shooting sun arrows flew over. In that moment, the aura in the huge room suddenly changed. A berserk aura was born from the shooting sun arrows, and when it arrived in front of the ancestor, the aura had accumulated to its peak. The ancestor's expression was no longer as calm as before. Instead, it became unprecedentedly solemn. His hands extended out from the cloak, and his 10 fingers were as sharp as swords. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. His 10 fingers danced, interweaving into a cold light. Bang! When the shooting sun arrows touched the cold light immediately disintegrated. The attack of the shooting sun arrows did not decrease as it shot towards the ancestor's chest like a hot knife through butter. "Stop!" The ancestor crossed his hands in front of his chest and grabbed the shooting sun arrows at the last moment. Hua! The ancestor slid out a long gully on the ground and quickly retreated. In the end, he left a big hole in the wall and fell down. "Shishi, how are you?" Tang Zheng came in front of Fang Shishi and asked anxiously. Fang Shishi's face revealed a happy smile, and said weakly, "I knew you would come to save me, I've been waiting for you." Tang Zheng held her tightly in his arms and said, "Don't speak, you're too weak." Looking at Fang Shishi's weak state, Tang Zheng did not dare to continue fighting. The most important thing now was to save her. He carried Fang Shishi and said, "Let's go, leave this place." He suddenly turned his head and shouted, "Xiao Bai, retreat." Little White's fighting spirit was high. 1 man against 10,000. Although there were many enemies, no one could charge in from the entrance. The blazing flames had already burned many enemies to ashes, causing them to tremble in fear. Xiao Bai heard Tang Zheng's words and cried out. He was not satisfied and spat out a ball of flames, turning the entire room into a sea of flames. Then, he and Tang Zheng retreated to the big hole. Tang Zheng was just about to jump down when a fishy smell came from below. Careful! He shouted loudly, and with a thought, the war soul sword ruthlessly slashed downwards. Xiao Bai also spat out a ball of flames, illuminating the area below. The ancestor was not dead, but his cloak was tattered and he looked somewhat miserable. Tang Zheng secretly sighed. It was a pity that the shooting sun arrows did not kill the other party. Since that was the case, he could not continue fighting. He said, Sure, go into Summer World and rest for a while. The light on his wrist flashed and Fang Sure was sucked into Summer World. Tang Zheng once again pulled the bow and aimed at the ancestor. The ancestor's eyes flashed coldly. He was somewhat afraid of the shooting sun arrows and hurriedly dodged to the side. So, the shooting sun arrows flew out and the ancestor had no choice but to dodge. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to jump down from the castle. Boom! With a loud sound, the shooting sun arrows did not hit the ancestor, but shot into the castle wall, a huge crack spreading out. Stop! Seeing Tang Zheng retreat, the ancestor roared in anger. This was his headquarters. If he could not stop the enemy, it would be a joke. However, he was also extremely afraid of the bow and arrow in Tang Zheng's hands. He knew that it was definitely a divine armament, otherwise it would not be able to unleash such great power. This was the first time Tang Zheng had used the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows after refining the Aurus core. The explosive power was incomparable to before, and although Tang Zheng was extremely surprised, he did not have the time to investigate further. This was not a bad thing after all. Just as the ancestor wanted to chase after him, he heard another loud sound coming from behind him. Before he could understand what was going on, the huge castle had already pressed down on him. Caught off guard, he was directly pressed down under the ruins of the castle. This castle had been through countless years, but after being ruthlessly bombed by Tang Zheng with explosives and then being hit by the shooting sun arrows, the spiderweb-like cracks were like the last straw that broke the castle's back. The castle collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a pile of ruins. Seeing that, Tang Zheng was overjoyed. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. He ran without looking back, but Xiao Bai had already disappeared without a trace. He turned pale with fright and shouted, Xiao Bai! Creak creak! Xiao Bai scuttled out from the ruins with 2 shooting sun arrows tightly in his hands. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief and quickly kept the shooting sun arrows. Chapter 765. Get in. Ding Liang's voice rang out. Tang Zheng was startled. Ding Liang had actually rushed in despite the danger. He hurriedly got in and Ding Liang slammed on the accelerator. The car shot out like an arrow. Earlier, the patrols had all been attracted to the castle. When the castle collapsed, they were all buried inside, giving them a chance to escape. In the blink of an eye, the car disappeared into the boundless night. Bang! A loud sound rang out as a figure shot up from the ruins. A pair of huge wings spread out as he floated in the air. It was the ancestor. He wasn't dead, but his clothes were tattered and he looked battered and exhausted. Looking at the ruins below, he raised his head and let out a sharp cry. His voice shook the surroundings as an intense killing intent enveloped this part of the world. The car sped along the road. Tang Zheng's hearing was excellent. Although he was far away, he still heard the scream. His expression became serious. What's wrong? Ding Liang asked with concern. What he had seen and heard tonight was more exciting than the sum of his previous life combined. It made his adrenaline rush. He was also afraid, but in the end, he overcame his fear and came to help Tang Zheng. Seeing that Tang Zheng was not harmed in the slightest, Ding Liang was filled with admiration. Before this, He really did not dare to imagine that there would be someone who could barge into the Rockefeller family, destroy their castle, and still be able to escape unscathed. But Tang Zheng had done it. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he really wouldn't have believed it. At this moment, he looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of adoration. He was like a groupie who couldn't wait to ask for an autograph. Tang Zheng said indifferently, "I'm fine. The Rockefeller family will definitely conduct a large-scale search. Find a safe place for us to stay." Ding Liang snapped his fingers and said confidently, "Don't worry. I understand the principle of a crafty rabbit having 3 burrows. That's why I've already prepared a safe house." Tang Zheng was worried about Fang Shishir. With a thought, she came out of Sumeru world. When Ding Liang realized that there was someone in the back seat, he panicked and almost hit the car next to him. He stared at the person who suddenly appeared in the rearview mirror. It was the girl in the photo. She was even more beautiful in person than in the photo. "You really saved her?" Ding Liang asked in surprise. "Okay, focus on driving." Tang Zheng checked Fang Shishir's injuries. Strangely, the 2 wounds on her neck were gone, and her skin was as smooth as before. It was as if the ancestor hadn't sucked her blood at all. What's going on?" Tang Zheng turned pale with fright and hurriedly asked, "Shishir, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Fang Shishir opened her eyes weakly and looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. "I'm fine. I just feel weak all over. Also, I'm so cold." Cold? Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment. He quickly took out a set of clothes from Sumeru world and put them on for her. Then, he hugged her tightly in his arms. "I'm still cold," Fang Shishir murmured. Tang Zheng's head thumped. This was definitely not normal. Although she had lost a lot of blood, she was still a cultivator. Her body was incomparable to an ordinary person. It was impossible for her to be so weak. He hurriedly circulated the ancient clear heaven scroll. Mixed with pure yang energy, it was warm and comfortable. It was like a huge furnace enveloping Fang Shishir. "It's not that cold anymore. It's so comfortable." Fang Shishir's lips curled into a smile. She firmly held on to Tang Zheng's clothes. "Shishir, where else do you feel uncomfortable?" "It's like there's a seed in my body that's sprouting. Something is about to grow." Fang Shishir was silent for a long time. Then, she said doubtfully, "Seed? Grow?" Tang Zheng was confused. He really didn't understand what was going on. He hurriedly circulated his energy to check her body. There wasn't the slightest difference. "Ah, that's not right." Suddenly, he exclaimed. "Your cells are dividing and growing faster. It's much faster than mine." This was definitely not normal. Could it be? His heart turned cold. His face suddenly changed. He suddenly thought of a possibility. His heartstrings violently trembled. Because this situation was too terrifying. Could it be that she was going to become a vampire? There were many legends about vampires in the West. In the past, most people thought that they were fake. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. The most famous legend about vampires was that once a person's blood was sucked by a vampire, they would also become a vampire. Tang Zheng didn't want Fang Shishir to grow 2 long fangs and become a bat-like monster. That's not right. Those young girls who were tied to the pillars in the dungeon also had their blood sucked away. In the end, they turned into dried corpses. They didn't turn into vampires. In fact, he guessed correctly. There was a very important condition for a person to transform into a vampire after their blood was sucked dry, and that was that their blood couldn't be sucked dry. If it was sucked dry, then the person would die and wouldn't transform. The ancestor originally planned to suck Fang Shishir's blood dry in front of Tang Zheng. But he didn't expect Tang Zheng's strength to exceed his expectations and interrupt the process. In the end, Fang Shishir's blood wasn't sucked dry. The mysterious power of vampires had been injected into her body. Her body was transforming step by step. When the transformation was complete, she would become a vampire. This was also why the wound on her neck had disappeared. It was because she was slowly gaining the vampire's ability to automatically heal wounds. Tang Jing didn't know the specific reason, but he knew that things were bad. Creak. The car finally stopped. Ding Liang took the initiative to open the door. We're here. It's very safe here. No one will find out. You go in first. I'll get rid of the car. This car had been seen in Rockefeller Manor, so it definitely couldn't be driven again. After all, Ding Liang was a spy and had the awareness of anti-reconnaissance. Tang Jing carried Fang Shishir into the house. Her expression became peaceful, as if there was nothing wrong with her. But Tang Jing knew that this was just an appearance. It was too deceiving. Shishir, try to circulate your energy. Find out what the feeling you're talking about is. Tang Jing helped her sit up and instructed. Okay. Fang Shishir did as she was told. After a while, she exclaimed, my teeth are growing. What? Tang Jing was shocked. His random guess was right. She was really transforming into a vampire bit by bit. Open your mouth. Let me see. Ah. Tang Jing focused on the teeth in her mouth. Sure enough, two of them seemed to be a little strange. He couldn't help but think of the ancestors' two long fangs. What's wrong with me? Fang Shishir asked curiously. It's nothing. Don't worry. It's just a small problem. Tang Jing comforted her, but his heart was like an ant on a hot pan. He thought silently, what should I do? I can't let her become a vampire. I'm cold. Suddenly, Fang Shishir shouted again. Tang Jing hurriedly hugged her. I'm here. Hold me. Before he could finish his sentence, he was stunned. He thought to himself, she keeps complaining about the cold. This must be caused by the transformation process. If I use it to counteract her coldness, will I be able to suppress the transformation process? He wasn't sure, but there was no other way. He could only give it a try. Sure, bear with it. It might be a little painful later. Tang Jing comforted. What's wrong? Fang Shishir was confused. Is there a big problem with my body? Don't think too much. Be obedient. Fang Shishir looked at him with shining eyes and smiled. With you by my side, no matter how big the pain is, I can bear it. Tang Jing's heart softened. He clenched his teeth and circulated his power. This time, he was multitasking. Not only was he using the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll, but he was also using the Dragon God's secret art. The two sets of mysterious cultivation methods began to circulate according to his own trajectory. The golden core in his dantian quickly rotated. Traces of true qi were born from the golden core. Not only was the true qi mixed with pure yang energy, it was also mixed with dragon qi. Whoosh! Tang Jing took a deep breath and concentrated. With a thought, his true qi drilled into Fang Shishir's meridians. Ah! Fang Shishir immediately cried out in pain, but she immediately clenched her teeth, not letting herself make a sound. However, the pain was still real. Cultivators have their own true qi. Once the true qi from the outside world enters, it will encounter resistance. Especially the more true qi from the outside world, the stronger the resistance will be. And the person involved will definitely suffer a great deal of pain. Tang Jing's cultivation was much higher than Fang Shishir's, so his true qi could forcefully break into her meridians, step by step, spreading to her internal organs and meridians. Tang Jing felt like a knife was twisting, but he was helpless. He could only control his true qi in order to minimize the damage to her. There was an extremely cold force in her meridians that was hidden very cleverly. Previously, it had escaped Tang Jing's detection. This was something that had never happened before. Unless he increased the amount of true qi, he would definitely not be able to discover it. Previously, when he was probing her injuries, he only used a very weak strand of true qi, so he did not discover this strange point. It must be the work of this cold and gloomy energy. Tang Zheng found his target and let his true qi fill her meridians. Her own true qi was seized by Xian Bing and forced into a corner. Tang Zheng's true qi took over the magpie's nest. Using his own strength, he consumed the cold force bit by bit. However, this was a huge consumption for Tang Zheng. Not only did he consume a lot of his mind, his true qi was almost exhausted. If not for his extraordinary perseverance, he would have already fainted. Fang Shishir was sweating profusely, clenching her teeth and holding on. Tang Zheng was the same. He tried his best to control his true qi and mind, not letting his efforts go to waste. Fortunately, his true qi worked, which greatly boosted his spirit. Time passed by minute by minute. Unknowingly, Tang Zheng's true qi was exhausted. He fell to the ground and fainted. Chapter 766. Dawn arrived. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir slowly woke up, and the moment they saw each other, their eyes blossomed with joy from the bottom of their hearts. Shishir, how are you? Tang Zheng hurriedly asked. Fang Shishir stretched her body and said, I feel very good. Are you still cold? Not cold. Tang Zheng was still on tenterhooks as he stared at her mouth and stammered, your teeth. Fang Shishir understood and immediately opened her mouth and cheered, my teeth are fine. Really? They didn't grow back? Tang Zheng hurriedly looked closer. Her teeth were still snow white and there was no difference. Are you afraid that I will become a vampire? Fang Shishir covered her mouth and laughed. Tang Zheng seriously nodded his head. Fang Shishir stretched out her finger and tapped his forehead and said with a smile, even if I die, I won't become that kind of monster. Tang Zheng held her hand and said, don't say die. You have to accompany me for a lifetime. Fang Shishir's heart was as sweet as honey and her face was filled with a happy smile. Feel your body and see if there is anything strange? Tang Zheng urged. Fang Shishir nodded her head and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened her eyes and cried out in surprise, how could this be? My cultivation has increased so much. 6th grade Anidia, I have actually reached the 6th grade Anidia. She was previously only a 1st grade Anidia and now her cultivation had increased by 5 grades. This was truly shocking. Tang Zheng walked step by step. He had never suddenly increased his cultivation by so much. He suppressed his excitement and said, is there anything wrong with your body? As the saying goes, when things are abnormal, there must be a demon. Her cultivation had increased by so much and there was definitely a reason. Perhaps it was because of the cold energy in her meridians. Fang Shishir shook her head, I feel like I have an endless amount of energy. My body is very strong. Tang Zheng suddenly remembered that her wound had automatically healed and asked, Shishir, bear with me for a while. I will do an experiment. Fang Shishir looked at him suspiciously. She saw his fingernail lightly cut her finger. A small wound appeared and blood flowed out. Ah, what are you doing? Fang Shishir cried out in alarm. Shishir, don't move. Tang Zheng looked at the wound in a daze. Just as the blood was about to drip from her finger, it suddenly stopped and retreated back into her skin. It was as if she had seen a ghost. Fang Shishir looked at her finger as if it was not her finger. After the blood flowed back, the small wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the skin was as good as new. There was no trace of the wound at all. Hiss. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. He did not expect that Fang Shishir would have the ability to automatically heal wounds. Without a doubt, this was caused by the power of vampires. He used his own qi to offset the power of the transformation, but some of the characteristics of vampires remained in Fang Shishir's body. What is going on? Fang Shishir asked in confusion. Tang Zheng smacked his lips and organized his words before explaining, Shishir, This is the ability of vampires to automatically heal wounds. High-level vampires even have immortal bodies. I don't know if you also have this ability. Immortal body? Fang Shishir never thought that she would have this ability. This was a good thing that many ancient kings dreamed of. Could it be that it had fallen into her hands? She shook her head, thinking that it was impossible. Tang Zheng was also not sure. He could not really use a knife to kill her as an experiment. After all, it was too risky. But the ability to heal wounds was already abnormal. Moreover, she did not have the side effects of vampires. She grew bat-like wings and long fangs. Fang Shishir was still a beautiful girl, but her strength was stronger. Tang Zheng was pleasantly surprised. He hugged her and spun her around, shouting, "Shishir, you are amazing. This is all thanks to you. If you did not save me, I would have become a monster." Fang Shishir stood on tiptoe and kissed him affectionately. Cough cough. A dry cough broke the sweet world between the two of them. Ding Liang was standing at the door, looking at them awkwardly. Fang Shishir quickly broke free from Tang Zheng's arms, her face red. Tang Zheng was thick-skinned, as if nothing had happened. "Last night when I came in, I saw that you were motionless. You must have been healing, so I did not disturb you," Ding Liang said. "Thank you. How is the situation outside?" Ding Liang's face was cold. He said in a deep voice, "The situation is not optimistic. Even the government has been alarmed. The police have already launched a carpet search. Can you still go out now?" "It's very difficult." Ding Liang shook his head. "Shishir has been rescued. After all, the Rockefeller family is a local snake. Their patriarch's cultivation is higher than mine. It is best to leave this place for the time being," Tang Zheng said. Ding Liang agreed, "Yes, it is safest to go back to Huaxia. Although the Rockefeller family is powerful, their infiltration work in Huaxia is not optimistic. In Huaxia, they can't make any big waves." "But how can we leave?" Fang Shishir asked worriedly. "All the airports and ports have been monitored. As long as you show up, you will be found," Ding Liang said worriedly. He had been lurking in this country for decades and knew the situation here very well. Tang Zheng said that if Gui Qiansui was here, it wouldn't be so difficult. Just like when they left the island nation, they could easily leave from the bottom of the sea. Seeing Tang Zheng frowning, Ding Liang comforted, "There will always be a way. Don't worry. At worst, I will gather all the forces of the China National Security Bureau in the Atlantic Empire to escort you back to your country." Last night, Ding Liang had already reported the operation to Suing Tian. When he heard that Tang Zheng directly destroyed the Rockefeller family's manor, Suing Tian knew that things were bad. He ordered Ding Liang to ensure the safety of Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir at all costs. They must be escorted back to their country. Tang Zheng looked at Ding Liang gratefully and shook his head to refuse. "No need. The National Security Bureau's years of infiltration in the Atlantic Empire cannot be destroyed because of me. Otherwise, it will give the Dragon Group a reason to stir up trouble. But if we don't do this, how will you leave? Let me think for a bit." Tang Zheng patted his forehead as he racked his brains. Dong dong dong. A burst of rapid knocks on the door interrupted their conversation. "Someone is coming." The three immediately became alert. Ding Liang shushed them and whispered, "Don't make a sound. I will go and see what the situation is. Be careful." Ding Liang went to open the door. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir were hiding in the bedroom door, but their eyes were fixed on the door. "What's the matter?" Ding Liang opened the door and asked calmly. "Sir, may I ask if you have seen these two people before?" A few police officers asked while holding Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir's photos. "Sorry, I haven't seen them," Ding Liang said. "These two are terrorists. They are very dangerous. We have to investigate door to door to eliminate all possible dangers. Sir, we have to go in and search." the policeman said aggressively. Ding Liang pretended to be angry and said, "Sorry, this is my home. You can't come in." The policemen looked at each other and suddenly fiercely pushed open the door and said, "We are carrying out official duties. If you don't cooperate, then we will arrest you for obstructing official duties." Ding Liang staggered back. He wanted to argue, but the policeman had already pulled out his gun and pointed it at him. He was shocked. If he let them in, then he would be exposed. He remembered Su Yingtian's order. He must not let anything happen to Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir. So, he resisted and at the same time shouted, "Tang Zheng, run!" The policeman immediately reacted and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Ding Liang thought that he was finally going to become a martyr. He even saw the muzzle of the gun spitting out flames. But in the next second, he found his body floating and quickly retreating. "Let's go together." Tang Zheng rushed over to save him. With a palm strike, an earth-shattering momentum slammed into the group of policemen. They were immediately sent flying. Then, Tang Zheng and the other two escaped from the back door. "Get in the car." Ding Liang dashed into another car that had been prepared long ago, carrying the two of them and roaring away like a bolt of lightning. Woo-woo sirens sounded and several police cars chased after them. Ding Liang stepped on the accelerator and the car sped up. Suddenly, the sound of a propeller came from above. It was actually a helicopter that caught up. Da-da-da. The bullets were directly greeted and the trunk of the car was like a sieve. F***CK. Heaven and earth, this is really a big investment. Ding Liang unwillingly roared. Tang Zheng poked his head out. With a flash of sword light, War Soul flew into the sky. With a crash, it directly cut open the belly of the helicopter. It fell to the ground and turned into a cloud of black smoke. Ding Liang's eyes lit up. He gave a thumbs up and sincerely praised, "Too cool." Huff huff. Tang Zheng hurriedly gasped for breath. Last night, when he healed Fang Shishir, his true qi was almost exhausted. This morning, he had only recovered a little. So when he rashly used the Imperial Sword technique, he actually felt powerless. "I need to find a quiet place to recover as soon as possible." Now that he was in a life and death situation, he could not multitask and recover his strength while facing the enemy. Although he had temporarily gotten rid of the police, Tang Zheng knew that since he had appeared, with the technology of the Atlantic Empire, it would be difficult for him to hide. If it was an ordinary police, it would be easier to deal with them. The key was that if the ancestor came, then he would really be helpless. "Where are we going?" Ding Liang asked at a loss. "To the city center." Now that they were in the suburbs, they were too obvious a target. It was better to go into the city and blend into the sea of people. Ding Liang's eyes turned and also thought of this point. He agreed, "Okay." Stepping on the accelerator, the tires rubbed against the ground, causing white smoke to rise as they sped towards the city center. Fang Shishir held Tang Zheng's hand and said, "I will face the enemy later. You rest first." Tang Zheng squeezed out a smile and said, "Don't worry, with me here, you will be fine." Chapter 767. Charge. Although the road ahead was filled with obstacles, Tang Zheng was not prepared to retreat. He had to find a quiet place to recover his power. In such a big city, such a place was easy to find. "Okay, charge." Ding Liang gritted his teeth and stepped on the accelerator. The engine let out a deafening roar. Woo! The car shot out like an arrow from a bow. "Stop." The police used their loudspeakers to stop the car, but they were met with a head-on collision. Bang! The police car was sent flying, revealing a narrow space. The car slipped through like a fish in water. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out like firecrackers, hitting the car and causing sparks to fly. However, the car sped away. Many police cars were chasing after it with their sirens blaring. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise came from the roof of the car. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. There's someone on the roof. Pfft! A sharp claw broke through the roof of the car and clawed down. Tang Zheng raised his sword and chopped off the claw, causing fresh blood to splatter all over the carriage. Crash! The roof of the car was blown away. A huge werewolf tried to jump in. Although it only had one arm left, it was still murderous. I'll deal with it. Fang Shishir volunteered. She jumped up and slapped the werewolf's body. The werewolf staggered and fell to the ground. However, his claws were still firmly embedded in the body of the car as he was dragged forward. The werewolf's skin was coarse and thick. With a kick of its hind legs, it jumped back onto the car and fiercely pounced on Fang Shishir. Shishir, use my war spirit. Fang Shishir raised war spirit and slashed down. The werewolf's head was separated from its body and flew out. Fang Shishir's heart pounded. It was the first time in her life that she had experienced such a thrilling battle. It was inevitable that she was overwhelmed with emotions. Ding Liang's heart almost jumped out of his chest. He looked at his car that had turned into a convertible. His face stiffened and he forced out a bitter smile. He did not see the werewolf face to face last night, so the shock he received was not small. Turn the corner up ahead. Stop and get off. Tang Zheng shouted. Caw. The car stopped in an alley. The three of them got out of the car and were about to escape when suddenly, a rough off-road vehicle stopped in front of them. The three of them were stunned. Just as they were about to make the first move, they saw the car window roll down, revealing a beautiful face. The three of them widened their eyes as they recognized this person. Princess An. Tang Zheng was confused. Wasn't she in Huaxia? Why was she here? Fang Shishir's eyes widened as she stared at the princess of the royal family, who had appeared in all the newspapers and was rumored to have many scandals with Tang Zheng. It turned out that she was even more beautiful and noble than in the photos. Ding Liang's jaw almost dropped. Why did Princess An also come out? He felt like he was in a dream. Princess An only had eyes for Tang Zheng. She looked at his surprised expression proudly and raised her eyebrows. She said valiantly, "Get in." Tang Zheng knew that the situation was urgent, so he did not ask any questions. He pulled Fang Shishir and got in. Ding Liang's feet were as light as a feather. He almost climbed into the car. Sitting in a car driven by a princess, he never dreamed that he would be treated like this. Whoosh! The off-road vehicle sped out and disappeared into the endless traffic. The pursuing police saw the target car, but the target was nowhere to be found. Why are you in the Atlantic Empire? Tang Zheng saw that there were no pursuers and finally asked. And smiled. I thought you wouldn't ask. Hee, Master told me that you came to the Atlantic Empire to save senior sister, so I came to see if there was anything I could help with. After all, I am more familiar with this place than you. Master, senior sister? Fang Shishir was confused. Who was she talking about? Princess An turned her head and looked at Fang Shishir. Senior sister, nice to meet you. Master often talks about you. Fang Shishir was startled. She finally knew that she was the senior sister that Princess An was talking about. Tian Chanzi also took her in as a disciple, so you are from the same sect. Tang Zheng hurriedly explained. Fang Shishir suddenly understood and politely replied, Nice to meet you. I came just in time this time. As far as I know, the Rockefeller family and the government have already set up an inescapable net. They are bound to capture you, or kill you. Princess An said, her eyes slightly shining. Your action last night was really amazing. You directly destroyed the Rockefeller family's nest. You should know that no one has dared to do this in the past 100 years. Tang Zheng was expressionless. If I had to do it again, would do it again. Unfortunately, the Rockefeller family's patriarch is too powerful. I didn't have the chance to kill him. Princess Anne excitedly smiled. Mr. Knight, you are really handsome. The outside world had always been rumored that Tang Zheng was her mysterious knight. Therefore, she couldn't help but praise him with this word. Fang Shishir slightly frowned. She was naturally clear about this story. Calling Tang Zheng a knight in front of her was very provocative. Do you know why the European countries fell from their altars? Anne asked. Why? It's because of the Rockefeller family. They are vampires, werewolves, and they have always been in cahoots with the Atlantic Empire's government. Back then, many European royalty and nobles died in the hands of the Rockefeller family. Because of this, the European countries fell, and the Atlantic Empire rose to become the most powerful country in the world. Tang Zheng was shocked. He didn't think that there would be such a thing. Therefore, I am actually very happy to see the Rockefeller family fall. It would be best if they were completely finished. Then, the Atlantic Empire can no longer strut around and act as the world's police. And gloated. Then if you were exposed, wouldn't it involve the Swedish royal family? Tang Zheng curiously asked. Annie shrugged and stared at him with burning eyes. Don't I have you? My knight. I believe that you won't just watch me and my country be bullied by the Rockefeller family, right? Tang Zheng did not reply, but secretly sighed. Of course he would not just stand by and watch. She was a noble princess, and even risked her life to save him. How could he just watch her and her country suffer because of this and not care about it? Annie was a very smart person. Sweden was considered a small country among the European countries, and it was struggling to survive in the cracks of other countries. Although the royal family's prestige still existed, it was more of a symbol. The real life of the royal family wasn't as glamorous as what the outside world saw. In fact, the royal family also had a lot of helplessness and difficulties. As the princess of a country, Annie naturally shouldered the responsibility of the royal family. If she really had a helper like Tang Zheng, then it would be a good thing for the royal family. Perhaps, it could turn the royal family's situation around. Of course, she did not hesitate to put herself in danger to save Tang Zheng, not entirely because of this utilitarian thought, but because she subconsciously acted out of concern for his safety. Of course, she was a person who liked excitement. How could she miss out on such an exciting thing? Moreover, she always wanted to improve her relationship with Tang Zheng. However, Tang Zheng's body was like a thick eggshell that couldn't be touched by fire and water. This was an opportunity, and she naturally couldn't miss it. She looked forward to the relationship between the two of them. Looking at Tang Zheng's expression, Annie's eyes lit up as she knew that her actions were finally effective and that this trip was not in vain. The off-road vehicle drove into a heavily guarded area. The guards respectfully saluted the off-road vehicle with a solemn expression. Looking out of the window, Ding Liang's expression slightly changed as he exclaimed, "The embassy." And smiled. This is the safest place. No one can harm you guys here. I believe that you guys need this place. Thank you. Tang Zheng gratefully replied. He truly needed this place to recover his cultivation. When the few of them got out of the vehicle, they were led to a luxurious suite. Tang Zheng chose a room and immediately recovered his cultivation. Seeing the two women looking at each other awkwardly, Ding Liang hurriedly escaped into a room. Only Fang Shishir and were left in the living room. You and Tang Zheng have known each other for a long time, right? And was the first to break the silence. Fang Shishir nodded her head. I really envy you. You've known him for so long. If I had known him a few years earlier, my life would definitely be more interesting. And said with regret. Fang Shishir still couldn't understand Anne's thoughts. She politely said, "Thank you for saving me this time. This is my duty. After all, he is my knight and has saved my life twice. Once from the hands of pirates and once from the hands of an island nation's assassin." And said with a smile as if she was recalling the thrilling scene. He has always been willing to help others. Yes, so having such a boyfriend is really enviable. Senior sister, you are the happiest woman in the world. And complimented. You are a princess of a country. You are also very happy. I don't know how many girls envy you. And faintly sighed, if I had such an outstanding man to love, then even if the halo above my head was removed I would still be willing. Fang Shishi's heart thumped. She didn't come with good intentions. Her words seemed to be coveting Tang Zheng. Immediately, she sat up straight and secretly talked with Anne. The women's conversation was in the clouds. Outsiders wouldn't be able to understand the meaning behind it. Tang Zheng didn't have the mind to pay attention to the two women's conversation. He silently revolved his power. His true qi increased little by little. His power recovered little by little. His body was filled with strength. His mind was immersed in Sumi Tian world. There was also an inexhaustible supply of bronze masks. Absorbing the power from them would allow him to quickly increase his true qi. One by one, the bronze masks lost their spiritual power. Together with the terracotta figures, they collapsed and became useless. Time passed minute by minute. His power quickly recovered. The sound of the terracotta figures breaking could be heard in Sumi Tian world. The yin qi in Sumi Tian world was very rich. It was stirred up by the wind and clouds. Hoo. The yin qi gathered and condensed into a whole. It rushed into a wooden box in the darkness. Chapter 768. Tang Zheng sensed something and immediately noticed the change in the wooden box. Isn't this the wooden box I brought out from Langya Pavilion? At that time, it was placed side by side with the Inferno Divine Palm's wooden box. He had tried his best but was still unable to open it. He never thought that at this moment, it would open for no reason. The wooden box must have absorbed the yin qi earlier, so it opened by itself. He originally had the 9 yang saint body, so how could there be any yin qi in his body? Therefore, he never thought that he could use yin qi to trigger this wooden box. The wooden box had always been in Sumra world, so it was constantly being soaked in yin qi. Just now, it had absorbed so much yin qi that this change occurred. Strange. Tang Zheng secretly clicked his tongue and looked straight at the wooden box. There was a jade token in the wooden box. The jade token's luster was moving, and one could tell at a glance that it was not an ordinary item. Could it be a cultivation technique? Tang Zheng still remembered that there were many cultivation techniques recorded in the jade token he obtained from the demon race. He even chose the sky-swallowing technique to cultivate. Although the sky-swallowing technique could swallow objects and had many ingenious uses in battle, he had always treated it as a support technique. Sumra world flashed and a jade token appeared in Tang Zheng's hand. He immediately immersed his divine sense into it and a passage of text was immediately branded in his mind. The jade token's light dimmed and finally with a crack, it turned into dust. He hurriedly concentrated on analyzing the text. Without a doubt, this was a cultivation technique. However, he was confused because this was completely different from a normal cultivation technique. It seemed to be a fragmented and incomplete cultivation technique. What the hell, a fragment of a cultivation technique is worth keeping so carefully. Moreover, this cultivation technique was placed together with the Inferno Divine Palm. I originally thought it was a martial arts manual, but I didn't expect it to be a cultivation technique. Tang Zheng really couldn't figure out the reason, but he still read on word by word, hoping to comprehend the profound meaning within. Unknowingly, his true qi began to move. With a clang, a table in the distance flew toward him and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ah! He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He hurriedly raised his hand, and a black hole appeared in his palm. Wasn't this the scene when he used the sky-swallowing technique? How could this fragment trigger a reaction from the sky-swallowing technique? He flipped through the remaining pages word by word, and the incantation of the sky-swallowing technique slowly emerged in his mind. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. Why does it have so many similarities with the heaven-swallowing technique? This discovery made him extremely surprised. When he carefully compared the two cultivation techniques, he actually found that after the sky-swallowing technique ended, he could smoothly transition to the incomplete cultivation technique. Could it be that the original sky-devouring technique was not complete, and this fragment is only the second half of the sky-devouring technique? Only when the two are combined together can it be the complete sky-devouring technique? He was completely shocked. Ever since he started practicing the sky-swallowing technique, he had only practiced it for fun because it was a technique of the demon race. He hadn't really put his heart and soul into it, so the power of the sky-swallowing technique had always been barely satisfactory. He originally thought that this was because the sky-swallowing technique only had this much power, and that the description of swallowing the heavens and the earth was just an exaggeration to scare people. Now it seemed that he had underestimated the power of the sky-swallowing technique. Or rather, the demon race's sky-swallowing technique was originally incomplete, and the most important part of the second half of the technique was actually shelved in the Langya Pavilion. Even the dragon race would not be stingy to take a second look at the fragment placed on the first floor of the Langya Pavilion. This was because the first floor of the Langya Pavilion was filled with martial arts techniques. The dragon race would definitely disdain cultivating martial arts techniques, and would instead cultivate more advanced cultivation techniques. The secret manuals on the first floor of the Langya Pavilion had always been shelved, and even the mysterious fragment of the sky-swallowing technique was hidden there. However, there was one thing that puzzled him. The cultivation techniques collected in the Langya Pavilion were all righteous cultivation techniques. They were dignified and magnificent, so how could there be a demon race cultivation technique? I'm afraid I can only go back and ask the five-clawed golden dragon. Tang Jing shook his head. When he connected the first and second parts of the sky-swallowing technique together, he made a new discovery. It turned out that the sky-swallowing technique was also divided into cultivation levels. They were, in order, devouring objects, absorbing skills, devouring souls, moving mountains, moving seas, and sky-swallowing. There were a total of 6 cultivation levels. Tang Jing realized that he had only cultivated to the first level of devouring objects. No wonder he could not sense its powerful power. If he cultivated to the 6th level of the sky-swallowing technique, then devouring the heavens and the earth would not be an exaggeration. He could really do it. He smacked his lips as he was stunned by this discovery. No wonder the demon race is so powerful. With such a heaven-defying cultivation technique, it's impossible for them not to be powerful. However, the sky-swallowing technique is not complete among the demon race, so they can't cultivate to this level. Without the second half of the technique, the cultivator will always be ignorant and will stop at the devouring objects level for life. Now that I have the complete cultivation technique, I can't give up on the sky-swallowing technique. Unlike other demon race cultivation techniques, I don't need to sacrifice other people's lives to increase my power during cultivation. It won't go against the heavens and the earth. Since I've cultivated to the sky-swallowing technique, I'll see if I can break through and reach the second level of the sky-swallowing technique. He delightfully began to research and explore, but was immediately shocked by the introduction of the absorption technique. This was because, if one cultivated to this level, they could absorb the power of others. Furthermore, the higher their cultivation, the more power they could absorb from others. There was no need to cultivate at all. Just by absorbing other people's power, his cultivation could increase rapidly. He could not help but recall the scene when the first Emperor Qin absorbed the dragon qi in his body. There was a huge difference between the two. The first Emperor Qin absorbed the dragon qi, but he did not absorb power. Once the sky-swallowing technique absorbed the other party's power, the other party's cultivation would decrease greatly. If it continued to absorb, the other party would be beaten back to their original state, and their decades of cultivation would be wasted. If the other party's strength decreased and the other party's strength increased, there would be a huge gap. It was simply heaven-defying. Tang Zheng was excited. Did he not need this cultivation technique now? There were so many enemies. If he could absorb their power without killing them, would it not be the best of both worlds? Yang Ming suppressed the excitement in his heart and calmed down to focus on cultivating. He had already memorized the sky-swallowing technique by heart. In the past, he did not have many breakthroughs in his cultivation, but after comprehending the second half, he felt enlightened. Somehow, a special feeling welled up in his heart. He reached out his palm, and a black hole appeared on it. A mysterious aura spiraled around the hole. All of a sudden, the black hole shrunk bit by bit. Tang Jing frowned and gritted his teeth. It was obvious that he had reached a critical moment. Without warning, he shouted. The black hole quickly shrunk and disappeared, but the mysterious aura still lingered on his palm and could not be removed. Yang Ming opened his eyes and looked at his palm. He smiled and said, "I didn't expect to succeed so smoothly. I've finally cultivated the second level of the sky-swallowing technique. But it's a pity that I can only perform the sky-swallowing technique once a day now." It turned out that when he broke through, he had a slight understanding. The sky-swallowing technique was powerful, but it was not omnipotent. Given Tang Zhang's current strength, he could only perform it once a day. However, as his cultivation increased, the number of times he could use it would increase. Although there were many restrictions, Tang Zhang was not depressed. Instead, he was very happy. The restrictions showed the brilliance of the sky-swallowing technique. If there were no restrictions, there would definitely be people who did not work hard to cultivate every day. Instead, they would place all their hopes on absorbing other people's powers. Although it was very tempting, the powers absorbed were from external sources after all. They were not accumulated and cultivated bit by bit. The two were completely different. In the beginning, cultivators would definitely taste the sweetness and their powers would soar. However, if they relied too much on it and neglected the essentials, their cultivation would become more difficult and stagnate. This was because the powers in their bodies were all absorbed, and the dregs and essences were all absorbed. On the other hand, their real powers were suppressed bit by bit, and in the end, they did not have a foothold. This was also the reason why even if there were people who could quickly help people increase their cultivation, they would not increase it too much. The further a cultivator wanted to go, the more they would need to increase their cultivation through their own hard work. This was a long-term plan. Tang Zhang was not blinded. Instead, he was very clear-headed. However, he was still looking forward to it. He did not know what it would be like to absorb other people's powers. His powers had already recovered to their peak. He walked out and found that the two women were sitting in the living room. The atmosphere was much more harmonious than before. It seemed that through talking, the unfamiliarity and estrangement between the two had disappeared. Tang Zhang let out a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that these two women did not fight. Although his impression of Anne was much better, he did not really have any improper thoughts about her. Especially in front of his girlfriend, he could not show the slightest interest in Anne. Although Anne was indeed very attractive. "Ah, are you okay?" The two women stood up at the same time and asked in unison. "I'm fine. Thank you for your help, Princess Anne." And smiled sweetly. "Why are we still so distant? What are you going to do next?" Although Tang Zhang had recovered his powers and even had a breakthrough in the sky-swallowing technique, he was not arrogant enough to confront the ancestor directly. This powerful opponent could only be dealt with in the future. "I wonder if Princess Anne has a way to send us out of the Atlantic Empire?" Tang Zhang asked. And nodded confidently. "Of course there is a way. You must be eager to leave, so let's go now." Tang Zhang agreed. He was very grateful for Anne's understanding. "Men." Anne called. The door was pushed open, and a person walked in respectfully. "What orders does the princess have?" "Prepare the plane. We will leave immediately." "Yes." After a while, he came back to report that everything was ready. Chapter 769. A luxurious private jet soared into the sky. Tang Zhang and the others finally breathed a sigh of relief. They couldn't help but recall what they had seen and heard on the way. The police sealed off the road and carried out a strict search of the passing cars. If they weren't in the embassy's car, they might not have been spared. At this critical moment, Princess Anne's name was still very frightening. Ordinary people didn't dare to act rashly. This time, they were able to leave safely because of Princess Anne. Tang Zheng nodded at her and thanked her sincerely. Anne smiled mysteriously and said, "Since you're on my plane, you have to listen to my arrangements." Tang Zheng smiled faintly, "Of course. When can we reach Huaxia?" "We won't go back to Huaxia for the time being. Let's go to my country." "Your country?" "That's right. My father and mother want to meet you. They sincerely invite you to visit my country. I hope you can do them the honor." Annie's smile disappeared as she said in a serious tone. This was out of Tang Zheng's expectations. He didn't expect her parents to invite him. However, the other party's daughter had helped him so much. If he directly refused, it would be unreasonable. Okay, it would be impolite to refuse. Tang Zheng promised. Fang Shishi's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness. Unspecified currency. Princess Anne's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's great." The plane landed at the Swedish Royal Airport. A team of armed guards was waiting for them. They escorted their motorcade into a magnificent palace. Looking from the window, this was a typical Gothic building. It had a historical charm, but it wasn't majestic. Of course, it definitely didn't have the aura of a nouveau riche. It was upright and very grand. Ding Liang had already been escorted to Huaxia by the guards. Tang Zheng and Fang Shishi became the guests of the royal family. As soon as they got out of the car, Fang Shishi held Tang Zheng's hand and didn't want to let go. It was as if she was declaring her sovereignty. Princess Anne glanced at it and dismissed it with a smile. Tang Zheng could sense the uneasiness in Shishi's heart. He smiled at her and held her hand tightly. Seeing his smile, Fang Shishi let out a sigh of relief in her heart. Looking at the magnificent palace, she took a deep breath and encouraged herself. She could not be frightened by the other party's formation. In the majestic palace, two people sat in a condescending manner. The man had an extraordinary bearing, while the woman was graceful and noble. Tang Zheng glanced at them and concluded that they were Anne's parents, the king and queen. The king and queen were also observing Tang Zheng. He was born with delicate features. His Asian face was completely different from the Westerners. It was refreshing. He had an imposing appearance, neither servile nor overbearing, and had an extraordinary temperament. But when they saw Tang Zheng and Fang Shishi tightly holding hands, a trace of fluctuation appeared in their eyes at the same time. What was going on? Could this girl be her younger sister? But wasn't he an orphan? He didn't have a younger sister. Although the two of them had complicated feelings, they did not show the slightest difference. This was the etiquette and bearing that a king and queen should have. The king stood up first and said in a kind and gentle tone, "Welcome our distinguished guest from afar, Mr. Tang Zheng." Tang Zheng nodded reservedly, "Thank you for your help, Your Majesty." This time, Anne was able to mobilize so many resources to help him. It was definitely not just her own actions and will. She must have received the king's approval. The king nodded and smiled, "Mr. Tang Zheng has helped my daughter many times. Your Huaxia values the kindness of a drop of water and a spring of water to be repaid. This is what I should do." The king was refined and courteous, and did not give off an overbearing and aloof feeling, which gave Tang Zheng a good impression of him. "Mr. Tang Zheng, why don't you introduce us to this beautiful young lady next to you? She is my girlfriend, Fang Shishi." Tang Zheng directly introduced her. The corner of Fang Shishi's mouth revealed a satisfied smile. The king and queen looked at each other, and their expressions finally changed a little. They looked at Anne at the same time. What was going on? How did he have a girlfriend? Anne's expression did not change, and there was a faint smile on her face. Although the king and queen had many questions in their hearts, they could not ask in person. That would be too rude and incompatible with the style of the royal family. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. The king immediately restrained his expression, laughed dryly, and praised insincerely, "Your girlfriend is so beautiful." After a pause, he quickly changed the topic, "Please move to the dining hall. Let's have lunch together first." After that, the king and queen walked down the stairs. The royal butler, Bruce, quickly came up to them. Bruce gave Tang Jing a deep look and slightly nodded his head. The two were familiar with each other, so Tang Jing also nodded his head in response. "Honorable guests, please," Bruce invited. Tang Jing held Fang Shishi's hand and walked side by side with the king and queen to the dining hall. There were many attendants standing on both sides, looking at them politely. And was pulled aside by the queen and whispered to in a low voice. The king had a gentle and dignified smile on his face the whole time. The group came to the dining hall, which was very bright. The sunlight outside the window shone in, perfectly setting off the elegant style of the dining hall. A group of attendants was busy in front of a long dining table. When the king and the others arrived, they were just ready and took a few steps back in unison. Exquisite dishes were already placed on the table. They were like works of art, exuding boundless beauty. Tang Jing was calm. After the king invited him, he took the initiative to sit down. The attendants considerately pulled out chairs for them. The king tapped the exquisite wine glass with a spoon, raised the glass, and said, "Today is to welcome the honorable guests from afar. Let us drink together and welcome the guests." The queen and princess raised their glasses. Tang Jing and Fang Shishi looked at each other and also raised their glasses. They took a sip. The king said, "Honorable guests, please taste our delicious food." When the meal began, Tang Jing buried himself in the delicacies. He had to admit that the Western food of the royal family was much better than the Western restaurants outside. Although he didn't eat Western food often, he could tell the difference between good and bad. Fang Shishi, on the other hand, found the food tasteless and ate in silence. Tang Jing didn't know the rules of the royal family, so he simply treated it as if it was his own home. He ate the dishes politely and didn't make a fool of himself. The royal family lived up to the saying of, "Don't talk when eating and don't talk when sleeping." They finished the meal in silence. Although the atmosphere was a little strange, both sides tacitly didn't point it out. The queen warmly invited Fang Shishi to visit the palace, and Tang Jing was invited to the king's study. Looking at the large books in the study, which was comparable to a library, Tang Jing deeply felt what it meant to have a heritage. This was definitely not like some nouveau riche who purely used the study as a way to show off. Those books were simply put on the shelf and would never be flipped through in their lifetime. The books in this library-like study were definitely frequently flipped through. This was the heritage that distinguished the nouveau riche. Bruce made the tea and politely left the study. The two sat quietly in front of the window and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. The king spoke first. "Mr. Tang Jing, I've heard a lot of rumors about you. Your identity is very special. Not only are you a mysterious practitioner, but you are also a consultant of the Huaxia Security Bureau. You also have your own company and are famous in Yenqing University. I really can't imagine how you can do all this at your age. So, I sincerely admire you." The king's straightforward praise made Tang Jing a little embarrassed. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, you flatter me." The king shook his head. "It's not flattering, but it's not enough to describe your excellence. This time, you directly collided with the Rockefeller family. This is no different from Mars colliding with Earth. It's really dazzling and amazing." Hearing the king mention the Rockefeller family, Tang Jing shivered. He knew the business was coming. The king's invitation was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It was just to thank him for helping Princess Anne. Every word and action of the royal family had a deep meaning. I heard Princess Anne mention some of the past history of the Rockefeller family and European countries. It was really unexpected and left a deep impression. Tang Jing simply continued the topic and simply said. The king's face showed grief. He sighed and said, "You don't know how big of a threat the Rockefeller family is to us. They really make people hate them to the bone. With the king's personality, saying such ruthless words was definitely not a lie. He probably really hated the Rockefeller family to the bone. Tang Zheng said sadly, "It's understandable. But why can't so many European countries join forces to fight against the Rockefeller family?" Back then, the European countries' national strength was the best in the world. Assassination. The Rockefeller family took advantage of their unique advantages and launched assassinations on the royal families of the European countries. Many of the royal families of the countries were killed by them. Of course, they also killed many of their own people. The killing continued for a century, and the Atlantic Empire took advantage of the situation to rise. In the end, both sides reached a compromise and temporarily maintained peace. However, the rise of the Atlantic Empire was irreversible, and the fall of the European countries could not be stopped. Because of this, the current situation was formed. Even now, many European countries still shamelessly follow the Atlantic Empire, forgetting their past. It is really lamentable. The king was panting with anger. Perhaps the resentment accumulated in his heart, which he had no way to vent, now seemed to have opened a gate and poured out. Tang Zheng looked at the king with a burning gaze and said, "Then you really want the Rockefeller family to completely disappear from this world?" Of course, it's not just me. There are many others who have the same idea. It's just that no one dared to go against the Rockefeller family. Now, a hero has appeared. The king looked at Tang Zheng with bright and piercing eyes. "You want me to completely defeat the Rockefeller family?" The king nodded, "Of course. That way, you will be the hero of Europe, an eternal hero with supreme influence. More influence than you used to have." In the past, he only relied on Princess Anne's mysterious knight to have a little influence, but in the eyes of the nobles, he still did not have much of a presence. Chapter 770. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, the king continued to add, "Since you have such a strong influence in Europe, no one will dare to touch you. I heard that many people in Huaxia are also hostile to you." Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. The other party's preparation was indeed sufficient. He even thought of this point. Tang Zheng did not hesitate to leave behind Mount Wujuan and the witch tribe. One of the biggest uses was to restrain the officials and make them wary. He, Tang Zheng, was not alone. He had a large group of brothers under him. In ancient times, it was often a taboo to have an army for oneself. However, if one had enough soldiers, it was not a taboo, but a deterrent and protective talisman. Moreover, your company will be unimpeded in Europe. This is a very large market. The king continued to throw out the bait. Seeing that Tang Zheng was unmoved, the king could not help but feel anxious. Could it be that his weight was not heavy enough? His mind spun rapidly. Although he was calm and collected, talking cheerfully and wittily, he was actually very anxious in his heart. He had been looking forward to the appearance of a hero like Tang Zheng for a long time. Now that the hero was in front of him, how could he just let him go? As the saying goes, a soldier who does not want to be a general is not a good soldier. He was not a good soldier, but he was a good king. He wanted to improve his country's influence and status in Europe and even the world. His territory was not large, but his ambition was not small. If he could achieve this, then he would leave his name in history. As a king, perhaps this was the only thing that was attractive enough. The king gritted his teeth and said, "I have heard of the rumors about you and Anne. Anne is the most famous princess in Europe. Many people admire her. I think you are the same. If you agree, I will not pursue the matter between you and your girlfriend. I know that Huaxia has many traditions, including polygamy. I respect your customs." Tang Zheng smacked his lips and almost bit his tongue off. He had really put in a lot of effort to make such a tempting offer. If it was someone else, they would definitely agree without hesitation. Being able to marry the princess of a country was something that many people dreamed of. It was simply like smoke rising from one's ancestral grave. However, Tang Zheng did not have any improper thoughts about Princess Anne. Although Princess Anne was beautiful, there was always a distance between them. When it came to liking someone, appearance was only one of the reasons, but it wasn't the deciding factor. The National Security Agency had endured the pain of using his daughter as a bargaining chip. It could be seen how desperate his thoughts were. Tang Zheng felt a little sad. In ancient times, princesses were often married off to seek peace. Although hundreds and thousands of years had passed, some things had not changed, even in the West, which had always boasted of freedom and democracy. Tang Zheng was not angry. He just felt that under Princess Anne's glamorous appearance, there was actually a lot of unhappiness and bitterness. She was not much different from an ordinary person. At this point, the halo above Princess Anne's head gradually dissipated in Tang Zheng's eyes. He couldn't help but feel that Princess Anne was also amiable. That sense of distance had disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng knew that Princess Anne had always wanted to improve their relationship, but he had always turned a blind eye. Now, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. In the future, he would treat her better and at least treat her as a friend. The king stared at Tang Zheng. He thought to himself, I've already lowered myself so much. Are you still not satisfied? He almost couldn't help but blurt out and directly ask Tang Zheng to state the conditions. Tang Zheng finally opened his mouth. He said neither too fast nor too slow, Your Majesty, I don't have any improper thoughts about Anne, but I will also agree to this matter. The king was overjoyed, but in his heart, he secretly thought that he must be too embarrassed to admit it. This kind of thing should be understood tacitly. It was indeed too impulsive to say it directly. He nodded towards Tang Zheng with a smile that said, I know what you're thinking. He stretched out his hand and said, Then I wish us a happy cooperation. A happy cooperation. Tang Zheng gently shook his hand. But this matter is too dangerous. I can't just take the risk and you guys can just sit back and reap the benefits. You guys should at least contribute a little, right? Of course, I have secretly contacted the kings of several countries. They have secretly come to Sweden. I will introduce them to you and discuss the specific details. Tang Zheng said that he was well prepared. He had actually contacted other countries as if he was sure that he would agree. Tang Zheng did not refuse. Next, it was time to negotiate the conditions. He would fight for enough etiquette for himself. The king seemed to be a person who firmly believed in striking while the iron was hot, so he arranged a meeting that night. Although the people in front of him were the rulers of a country that many people admired, in Tang Zheng's eyes, they had already shed their halo and become ordinary people, business partners, negotiation targets. Thus, he did not show any mercy and argued with them. In the end, he won a lot of benefits. In the future, when he truly attacked the Rockefeller family, these countries would have to support him. This support was not in the form of military strength, but in the form of economic support. They would fiercely attack the Rockefeller family's industries and seize the Rockefeller family's benefits. Naturally, these benefits would belong to Tang Zheng, and these countries would not be able to touch them. Although it was a little painful, when they thought about how their national strength would rapidly rise without the suppression of the Rockefeller family in the future, this sacrifice was worth it. At the same time, these countries would also attack the Atlantic Empire in the financial market. The most painful thing for a country was the virtual financial market. It would cause a shock in various industries and even shake the foundation of the country. According to the plan, Tang Zheng's company would send people to open up business in Europe to prepare to take over the Rockefeller family's industries in the future. This spoil of war would be huge. It should be known that the Rockefeller family had been in business for hundreds of years, involved in various industries, and was the leader in many of them. Once he took over these, Tang Zheng's industries would rapidly rise. Although it would not reach the current state of the Rockefeller family, in time, it would definitely surpass them. At that time, it would be difficult to resist even if the several major families in Huaxia were to join forces. His business empire would truly take shape. Fang Shishir was obviously not as good as Tang Zheng. Although the queen and princess were very friendly on the surface, the queen still had some hostility towards her. Fang Shishir, who was sensitive, was smart enough to feel it, but she could not do anything about it. She could only force a smile. In the dead of night, Tang Zheng and Fang Shishir were arranged in 2 separate rooms. Obviously, they were not in the same room as Tang Zheng wanted. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and he did not have the opportunity to talk to Fang Shishir. However, they obviously did not expect Tang Zheng to be so daring. He actually climbed over the wall, climbed through the window, and sneaked into Fang Shishir's room. When Fang Shishir saw the person who climbed in through the window, she almost made a move. However, after seeing the person's face clearly, she was shocked and opened her mouth wide. "You? How did you climb in?" Tang Zheng laughed. "I missed you." The two had not seen each other for several months. The process of their previous meeting could not be said to be wonderful. They had narrowly escaped death. Now that they were finally free, the strong feelings could not help but hit their hearts. Tang Zheng did not care about the rules. No rules could stop him from seeing Fang Shishir and complaining about the pain of lovesickness. He could not help but criticize His Majesty. Knowing that Fang Shishir was his girlfriend, he still insisted on arranging 2 rooms for them. This was blatantly destroying his happiness. After hearing this, Fang Shishir's words of reproach immediately disappeared. Only tenderness was left. She hugged him and said coquettishly, "I missed you too." As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. The 2 of them were originally passionate young men and women. When dry wood met a raging fire, it was easy to ignite. In a short while, the room was filled with sounds that made one blush. Fortunately, the room was soundproof, so there was no need to worry about the walls having ears. Because of this, the 2 of them were very immersed. They even unlocked many new moves, making the 2 of them feel as if their bodies and minds were floating on top of the clouds. Huff, huff. The 2 heavily gasped for breath before Tang Zheng flipped over and laid down flat on the ground. Fang Shishir was lying on his chest, her full breasts pressing against his chest, causing ripples in one's heart. He once again began to feel restless. Fang Shishir glanced at his lower body. Her face was as red as blood. She pretended to slap him and said, "Beat this dishonest guy." "Hey, what if you break it?" Tang Zheng hurriedly stopped her. "It's best if you break it. Then you won't attract bees and butterflies." Fang Shishir said coquettishly. Tang Zheng laughed. "If you break it, I won't be able to serve you." "How can you bear to do that?" "It would be strange if I didn't." Tang Zheng grabbed her hand and held her in his arms. "Don't move. Otherwise, you will really suffer. Be honest." Fang Shishir didn't dare to move again. She was deeply afraid that he would become lively again. She said sourly, "Princess and has a special liking for you." Tang Zheng righteously said, "I don't have any thoughts about it." I'm not afraid of thieves stealing, but I'm afraid of thieves remembering. Moreover, there are so many close female friends in the country." Hearing this, Tang Zheng couldn't help but think of Yi Dingdang. He said, "Ding Dang has left." Fang Shishir knew very well about the matter between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. Back then, Yi Dingdang's parents tried their best to matchmake the 2 of them, but in the end, she still won the first prize. She was happy for a long time. Later, she also chose to turn a blind eye to the ambiguous relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang. This was her philosophy. She wasn't as tough as Yi Dingdang. Her personality was more of a delicate woman's mentality. She liked Tang Zheng, and Tang Zheng also liked her. He even risked his life to save her. In this world, how many men could do this? She felt that this was her luck. Why should she ask for so much? This year of studying and living independently made her think through many things. Love wasn't just about possessing, but more about giving. Tang Zheng gave so much, but how much did she give? Therefore, even though she knew about Tang Zheng's romantic past, she still didn't leave him. Especially after experiencing this matter, she knew that she couldn't leave him in this lifetime. Chapter 771. Fang Shishir sensed Tang Zheng's gloomy mood. She gently stroked his chest and said emotionally, "I will never leave you." Tang Zheng's emotions fluctuated as he hugged her even tighter. He wanted nothing more than to rub her into his body. He promised, "I will never leave you either. I will always protect you." Fang Shishir gazed deeply into his eyes and nodded. "I believe you." Warm as spring, silky and delicate feelings lingered in each other's hearts. After a long time, they slightly calmed down. Tang Zheng asked, "Shishir, you wore the golden jade purple robe, but those people still caught you and even hurt you. It seems that a mere defensive transcendent artifact is not enough to protect you." Fang Shishir's expression darkened. This was a cruel reality. She forced a smile and said, "Transcendent artifacts are hard to find in this world. This is something that can't be helped." "That may not be so." Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. A rainbow light suddenly appeared in the center of his palm. This rainbow light floated up and illuminated the entire room. "Wow!" Fang Shishir opened her mouth wide. She had never seen such a brilliant scene in her life. It was like a rainbow, but more beautiful and mysterious than a rainbow. A ribbon floated in the air, giving her the urge to grab it. "This rainbow ribbon is for you." "For really?" Fang Shishir could not believe it. She could clearly feel the powerful energy contained in it. This was a rare high-grade transcendent artifact. "This is a heaven-grade transcendent artifact. It is as if it was specially made for you. I specially prepared this gift for you." This was one of the 3 transcendent artifacts that Tang Zheng took out from the 3rd floor of the Langya Pavilion. They were the clear wind sword, the sacred armor shield, and the rainbow ribbon. The clear wind sword had already been gifted to Yi Dingdang. The clear wind sword was very compatible with the wind-chasing swordsmanship. The sacred armor shield was an oracle bone, a heaven-grade defensive transcendent artifact. Tang Zheng kept it for his own use. However, he had no use for it at the moment. When he was fighting with Qin Shi in the mausoleum, Qin Shi's strength was too strong, and he couldn't resist at all. The holy armor shield couldn't change the situation. In Rockefeller's castle, he had successfully escaped without using the holy armor shield. Therefore, this heaven-grade defensive magic treasure was still in the idle stage. However, the rainbow ribbon finally welcomed its new owner. Fang Shishir was overjoyed. She kissed Tang Zheng and said sweetly, "You're too good to me. Let's bind it with blood first." Fang Shishir channeled her energy and forced out a drop of essence blood from her finger. It fell on the 7-colored silk. The 7-colored silk shone brightly, making it hard for people to open their eyes. "Collect!" Fang Shishir shouted, and the 7-colored light instantly converged. The 7-colored silk wrapped around her waist, and with a flash of light, it turned into a beautiful belt. "Wow, that's great!" Fang Shishir was so excited that she danced with joy. Tang Zheng also smiled. Seeing her so happy made him happier than if he had obtained a heaven-grade magic treasure. Making his woman happy was the duty of any true man. In Princess Anne's bedroom, 2 people were lying on the soft bed. Anne and the Queen, the mother and daughter pair, were confiding in each other. "And, you never told me that Tang Zheng has a girlfriend?" the Queen asked with a straight face. And slyly blinked and said, "You didn't ask me either." The Queen was angry, but with her magnanimous nature, she couldn't scold her. She could only earnestly say, "You are the princess. Could it be that you have to tolerate him having other women?" And shrugged and said, "Is there a lack of dirty things in the royal family of each country? How many people secretly have lovers? Mother, you should know, right?" The Queen was speechless. In any country, the most chaotic was the royal family. Don't look at the dignified appearance, but the dirty things in the dark were hard to imagine. The queen had been influenced by what she saw and heard over the years. But this is too much for you, the queen said with heartache. Actually, I don't know if I like him or not. At most, I have a good impression of him. Anne's eyes were filled with a complicated expression as she said faintly. If you don't like him, then stop in time. The queen was overjoyed. But I like to stay with him. It's especially exciting and never monotonous. Moreover, it gives me a sense of security. Princess Anne's eyes were filled with little stars. Huff, huff. The queen gasped for breath. She was obviously angry and said, "You are wrong, do you know that?" And shrugged and said, "Is that so? Who knows how many mistakes a person makes in their life? You have taught me since I was young to be cautious and avoid making mistakes. But I really want to make a mistake once and see how it feels." The queen looked as if she didn't recognize her daughter. She stared straight at her and said, "You will regret it." That's not necessarily true. Anne's eyes were firm. The next day, Tang Jing walked out of his room and smiled at Fang Shishir, who opened the door next door. Fang Shishir's face was red as she glared at him. "You're up." And the queen happened to walk in and saw the two exchanging glances. And pretended not to see, but the queen looked at Fang Shishir. Her face was flushed and her skin was smooth and delicate. It was very different from yesterday. As someone who had experienced it before, the queen could tell at a glance that Fang Shishir was nourished and the result of a balance of yin and yang. The two of them clearly slept in separate rooms. Could it be that they secretly slept together last night? Ridiculous, ridiculous. How could such a thing happen in the Swedish palace right under their noses? The queen's breathing couldn't help but quicken a bit, but she was very restrained and didn't flip out. Instead, she gave Tang Jing a deep look. Without a doubt, this kind of lustful matter was definitely his doing. "I'll take you out for a tour today." And warmly invited. Since the business was done, Tang Jing didn't intend to stay any longer. After all, there were still many things to do in the country. He couldn't contact Tian Chanzi and didn't know what happened in the east that made him so uneasy. "Thank you for your kindness, but I'm preparing to return to my country." Tang Jing tactfully refused. "Return to your country?" The queen was very surprised, especially when Tang Jing refused her daughter's kindness. This made her quite unhappy. There was no man in the world who had the heart to refuse Anne. Without a doubt, Tang Jing was the first. The queen was about to sternly refute, but Anne beat her to it. "Okay, school is busy, and I have to go back quickly. I can't stay any longer. Mother, we'll leave later. I'll miss you." And gave the queen a big hug. The queen's anger was suppressed in her chest, and she had nowhere to vent it. As an elegant queen, she wouldn't reprimand the man her daughter liked in front of her daughter, even if the man made her very unhappy. This was her basic quality. Thousands of words turned into one sentence. "Mother will miss you even more." After breakfast, Tang Jing was called by the king to the study for a long time. This time, the focus was on the master-disciple relationship between Anne and Tian Chanzi. Obviously, the king already knew about this strange master-disciple relationship, but he was happy to see it. He had learned from many channels that Tian Chanzi was a very powerful cultivator. His daughter had become a cultivator, so in the future, the royal family could also become cultivators. Why could the Rockefeller family run rampant and no one dared to provoke them? That was because of their unique physique and strong strength. He was stronger than other families and even the European royal family, so he could be so arrogant and suppress them fiercely. The European royal family had never found a way to enhance their own strength. Hua Xia's martial arts were, of course, powerful, but in fact, she kept it to herself and didn't teach it to outsiders. Not to mention these foreigners, even if they tried their best to learn, they only learned a little. But now it was different. A new broad road was in front of the king. He had heard of Tang Jing's strength, and he was a real master. If his daughter practiced it, then in the future, she could also teach the skills of cultivation to the royal family. The royal family was powerful and could be superior to other countries. Once the Rockefeller family fell, the Swedish royal family could quickly rise and suppress the other heroes. Just imagining that scene made the king extremely excited. Therefore, before leaving, he specially asked Tang Zheng to take care of Anne, and also prepared a big gift for him and Tian Chanzi, 2 special gift boxes made of unknown materials. Tang Zheng knew that the Western people were used to opening gift boxes in front of the host. He was also very curious about what kind of gift the king of a country would give. With his identity, he shouldn't be able to take out ordinary things. Eating and taking was Tang Zheng's favorite thing to do. He solemnly opened the box, and inside the 2 boxes laid a fist-sized shiny object that looked like a crystal. "What are these?" Tang Zheng asked, puzzled. Were they just 2 big crystals? That was a bit too shabby. Crystals weren't worth much. As if he could see his disappointment, the king hurriedly introduced as if he was presenting a treasure. These 2 crystals were found in a meteorite impact 100 years ago. According to our investigation, they contain a powerful energy, but we have no way to extract it. I thought that since you practitioners are so powerful, giving pearls to heroes, maybe you have a way. Crystals? Tang Zheng was full of doubts. There were too many uncertainties in the things found in meteorites. Maybe it was a waste stone that was useless on other planets, or it could contain treasures, elements that didn't exist on Earth. By examining and processing this kind of meteorite, many things could be made, such as weapons. Many famous knives and swords in ancient times were made of meteorite iron contained in meteorites. They could cut iron like mud and cut hair. They were the favorite of swordsmen. Was there energy in it? Tang Zheng was skeptical, but he casually grabbed a crystal. Whoosh! Tang Zheng's breathing quickened involuntarily. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the crystal in his palm in disbelief. His genuine qi was running on its own. A stream of energy was transferred from the crystal to his palm and flowed to his 8 extraordinary meridians. This energy was very pure, without a trace of impurities. It was even purer than the spirit stones he used before. Although it was only a small piece, the energy contained in it was immeasurable. How could ordinary pearls and gems compare to this? This was a priceless treasure. Chapter 772. Crystal stones were a higher-level existence than spirit stones. It was a cultivation treasure that cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. However, there were very few of them in the world, and they could only be found in some meteorites. Although Tang Zheng did not know this point, he could already confirm that crystal stones were very important to his future cultivation. He happily put away the gift box and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Looking at Tang Zheng's reaction, the king knew that this gift was the right one. He secretly thought that the remaining crystal stones would definitely be of great use to and in the future. Then I will leave and in your care in the future. Send my regards to Tian Chanzi. The king said with a smile. Tang Zheng, Fang Shishir, and Annie took a private jet to leave Sweden and return home. They landed at the Beijing International Airport, and without the entourage of attendants, they returned to the city in a light car. And looked at Tang Zheng and asked, "Tang Zheng, you must have found a new place to live, right?" Tang Zheng was speechless. A woman's mind was very meticulous. Seeing that he had not returned to his original home for a long time, she actually guessed this point. He could not deny it and could only nod his head. "Then can I go and take a look?" And looked at him with her big sparkling eyes. He could not refuse and could only nod his head. She when they arrived at the villa, and covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Wow, so you are living in such a luxurious place. No wonder you did not return to your previous home." Tang Zheng was speechless and rolled his eyes. Compared to her family's palace, this was a world of difference. Just as they entered the house, Nana flew down from upstairs. She jumped into Tang Zheng's arms and happily shouted, "Brother, you are finally back." Tang Zheng patted her back and said, "Yes, I missed Nana, so I came back." I miss you too. Nana pouted and looked at her with her big black eyes. Empyrean Fairy and Marshall also walked down the stairs. Empyrean Fairy glanced at Tang Zheng indifferently, and then focused all of her attention on Nana. The other two beauties did not attract her attention at all. When Wu saw Tang Zheng, she was a little excited, but when she saw Fang Shishir, her expression became a little awkward. Fang Shishir recognized Marshall, so he was not surprised, but towards the Empyrean Fairy, he could not help but take a few more glances. Although the Empyrean Fairy had deliberately concealed her charm, she was still extremely beautiful. And was dumbfounded. She exclaimed, "Wow, Huaxia has an idiom, a golden house hides a mistress." Yes, this is what it means to keep a mistress in a golden house. Tang Zheng almost spat out a mouthful of blood. How can you fan the flames like this? Do you think it's not chaotic enough? Fang Shishir's expression remained the same, as if he did not hear those words. Tang Zheng hurriedly introduced both parties, changing the topic. They all live here, and the rooms are also like this. I also want to choose one. I don't want to go back and live in that empty house alone. And was not polite at all. She directly said and ran upstairs to choose a room. Tang Zheng had no choice but to give up. Sure, go and choose a room. Tang Zheng said. I'll take her. Marshall took the initiative to say. Fang Shishir smiled faintly at her and thanked her before the two of them went upstairs. As for the Empyrean Fairy, she directly sat on the sofa and said without batting an eyelid, "Something seems to have happened in the east." Tang Zheng was stunned and asked, "You know about it too?" "I have a feeling, but I am still unable to determine what it is." Empyrean Fairy had been wholeheartedly teaching her disciple Nana during this period of time. She was not distracted at all and the matters of the outside world could not disturb her. Tang Zheng was puzzled. Not only did Tian Chanzi have feelings for him, but even Empyrean Fairy was no exception. This was not an illusion, but something big had happened. But what could it be? Tian Chanzi could not be contacted, so he had no way of knowing. His heart felt like it was being pressed down by a stone. He felt uneasy and decided to give Su Yingtian a call to see if he had any information. Su Yingtian's voice was somewhat tired. After returning from Heaven Mountain, he had arrested so many terrorists. During this period of time, he had been so busy that his feet did not touch the ground. Of course, these achievements had greatly increased the chief's impression of him. The negative impression of him had gradually been made up. When he heard Tang Zheng's voice, his tone returned to normal. He said, "Congratulations on successfully rescuing Miss Fang." Tang Zheng hurriedly thanked him. If he had not ordered Ding Liang to fully cooperate with him, he would not have been able to achieve such a victory. Last time, I said that something big had happened in the east. Do you have any news? I was just about to contact you. I just received the news not long ago. Something happened in the island nation. Many people died, and there was a strange phenomenon in the sky. This matter was kept secret very well. The people did not know at all. I also paid a huge price to obtain this information. Tang Zheng was silent. The deaths of many people and the strange phenomenon in the sky made his heart thump. His mood sank to the bottom. Wouldn't this be the case when the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array was activated? Could it be that someone had activated the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array in the island nation? If that was the case, this person had to be the Hundred Faces Star Lord. Tang Zheng had always been wary of the Hundred Faces Star Lord activating this array in the country. He did not expect that he would not do this at all. Instead, he went to the island nation. The island nation was adjacent to Huaxia. The spiritual energy was not too thin, especially when the Tree of Life was gradually improving the spiritual energy in the world. This caused the spiritual energy in the island nation to become even denser. This was something that Tang Zheng had personally experienced in the island nation the last time. There were restrictions to activating the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array and summoning the demons back. That was, it had to be near Huaxia, a place with abundant spiritual energy. Otherwise, the array would not be successfully activated. If it were not for this restriction, the Rockefeller family would not have traveled thousands of miles and risked exposure to activate this array in Heavenly Mountain. The Hundred Faces Star Lord was obviously smarter than the Rockefeller family and knew more about the secrets. Therefore, he took a step back and completed this operation in the island nation. Moreover, more people died in the sacrifice because, after all, it was in the island nation and not Huaxia. In order to maximize the effect, the Hundred Faces Star Lord did not hesitate to sacrifice several times more people. Although Tang Zheng was unwilling to admit it, he knew that his worries were probably true. The demons had returned to this world. The thing that he had always wanted to stop had happened. A strong sense of frustration hit him, causing him to lie on the sofa in defeat. Nana sensed his depression and crawled over. She asked with concern, "Brother, what's wrong?" Tang Zheng took a deep breath and shook his head weakly. "Tang Zheng, what's wrong?" Su Yingtian also sensed that something was wrong and quickly asked. "Director Su, I'm afraid that what we have always wanted to stop has failed in the end. The demons have returned." "Ah!" Su Yingtian let out a scream. With a thud, the phone fell to the ground. He quickly picked it up and asked breathlessly, "Are you sure?" "I'm pretty sure." "Could it be that someone in the island nation has activated the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array?" "Yes, and this must be done by the Hundred Faces Star Lord." Su Yingtian's breathing was like a bellows. He could not calm down for a long time. Finally, he asked helplessly, "Then what should we do?" "Make all the preparations. The demons have returned. This world is going to be in chaos." Tang Zheng said weakly. "I'll immediately report to the director." Su Yingtian did not have time to say more and quickly hung up the phone. Tang Zheng closed his eyes and sank into the sofa. His brain was spinning rapidly. The demons had returned. How should he deal with them? With his cultivation, he was afraid that there was no way to deal with them. Although he was already a second-grade golden core, the demons had more masters and greater destructive power. With his own strength, it was like a mantis trying to stop a car. Do I really have to rebuild the stairway to heaven and let all the practitioners in the human realm beyond heaven return to resist the demon's attack? But my cultivation has not reached the level to break the restriction of the Imperial City and release the five-clawed golden dragon. How can I take out the dark stone of heaven and earth under the Imperial City? He shook his head violently and was very confused. Empyrean Fairy looked at him curiously and said, "What happened? I heard you say that the demons have returned. Are the demons in the human realm beyond heaven coming back?" Empyrean Fairy already knew the details of the expulsion of the practitioners to the human realm beyond heaven hundreds of years ago. Tang Zheng let out a long sigh and said, "Yes." "Then what's the trouble? They were originally people of this world." Empyrean Fairy did not take it seriously. The demons have existed in this world for thousands of years. What's the fuss about their return? Tang Zheng shook his head. "It's not what you think. The demons are cruel by nature. Once they return, the people in this world will suffer." Empyrean Fairy looked at him strangely and said, "You and Qin Shi Huang are both Skywalkers, but there is a big difference between the two of you. He will never be troubled like you. The lives of ordinary people are like ants in his eyes. He will never care about their lives. He is the emperor of all ages. I am just an ordinary person. I can't be like him." Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. "Then what are you going to do?" Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng shook his head. "I have not thought of a way yet. I can only wait and see." Tian Chanzi went to the island nation. "Let's wait for his news." Since the demons had returned, Tang Zheng could not leave Huaxia. What if the demons returned and the people around him were harmed? The most important thing now was to figure out the movements of the demons after they returned. Were they still in the island nation, or had they already snuck back to Huaxia, and what their goal was? However, the necessary preparations could still be done. Lu Qingmei was still on a business trip, so he had to return to the capital as soon as possible. He was more at ease with his own woman by his side, so that he could protect them to the greatest extent. As for his grandfather, Tang Zheng had already made plans for Yi Yuan to bring him and the rest of the witch clan, including the elders of the witch clan who were overseas, to the island. That was his final base camp. The island was safer than the mainland. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.